I used to think family meant showing up when you called, but as I crouched on my bathroom floor at 2:07 in the morning, blood soaking through my pajamas, my parents asked only one question: did my monthly transfer fail? My twins were asleep down the hall, and surgery was minutes away. I walked into that hospital as a devoted daughter, but I woke up as a woman who was done acting as their personal bank. My name is Abigail Price, and up until the darkest hour of that Tuesday morning, I believed I had engineered a life that was finally perfectly stable. I live in Bridgewater, North Carolina, a town that balances the charm of the Old South with the convenience of the new suburbs. In a house that my husband Ethan and I bought specifically for its school district and its proximity to the parks. I am 32 years old, and I work as a senior financial analyst for Redwood and Marlin Analytics. My job is about predicting risk, managing volatility, and ensuring that when things crash, there is a safety net in place. I am good at it. I am the person who plans for the rainy day, the person who reads the fine print, the person who keeps the ship steady. My life at home was just as meticulously managed. We have twins, Miles and Molly, who are 20 months old. They are at that chaotic, beautiful age where they are discovering language and gravity simultaneously, usually with disastrous results for the furniture. But we had a rhythm, we had a schedule, and significantly, we had a secret that I had just started to let myself believe in. I was pregnant again. I was between 12 and 13 weeks along, firmly out of the first trimester danger zone that had terrified me so much with the twins. We had seen the heartbeat. We had told a few close friends. I had allowed myself to start looking at the third bedroom and imagining a crib there instead of the guest bed. I had let my guard down because the statistics said I was safe. But statistics do not care about the individual, and they certainly do not care about plans. It was 2:07 in the morning when the illusion of safety shattered. I did not wake up because of a noise. The house was silent, a heavy suburban silence that usually brought me comfort. I woke up because of a sensation that no pregnant woman ever wants to feel. It was a cold, wet slide between my legs, followed immediately by a cramping sensation so sharp it stole the breath from my lungs before I could even sit up. I threw the duvet off, my heart already hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. When I sat up, the room spun. It was a violent, sickening vertigo that made the corners of the room go dark. I gripped the nightstand, my knuckles white, waiting for the wave to pass. But it did not pass. It intensified. I stumbled toward the ensuite bathroom, my hands shaking as I reached for the light switch. The fluorescent light hummed to life, harsh and unforgiving. I looked down. The floor tiles were pristine white, which only made the contrast more horrifying. I was bleeding. I was not just spotting. I was not experiencing the minor, terrifying but normal fluctuations of pregnancy. I was hemorrhaging. The blood was bright red, heavy, and unrelenting. It soaked through my pajama bottoms and pooled around my feet in seconds. Terror, cold and absolute, washed over me. I grabbed a towel, pressing it against myself, trying to stop a tide that refused to be stemmed. My mind raced, trying to find a solution, a plan, a contingency. Ethan. I needed Ethan, but Ethan was 800 miles away. He was in St. Louis, Missouri, sitting in a hotel room, likely asleep, preparing for the final meeting on a contract that could define his career for the next 5 years. We had discussed this trip for weeks. I had told him to go. I had told him I felt great. I had told him the twins and I would be fine. I fumbled for my phone on the counter, my fingers slick and trembling. I did not call Ethan first. I called the on-call line for my obstetrics group. I needed a professional to tell me this was fixable, that this was just a scare. The phone rang 3 times before a groggy voice answered. I explained the situation, my voice sounding thin and high, like a stranger's. I detailed the amount of blood, the cramping, the dizziness. There was a pause on the line, the rustle of sheets, and then the doctor's voice came back, sharp and completely awake. "Mrs. Price, you need to get to the emergency room immediately. she said. Her tone left no room for negotiation. You are describing symptoms of a severe hemorrhage. If this is a miscarriage, it is incomplete, and you are losing blood too fast. You might need surgical intervention. Do not drive yourself. Call an ambulance or have someone drive you. You need to be here now. The line went dead. I stood there, gripping the marble counter, the room tilting dangerously to the left. The hospital was a 15-minute drive away. Under normal circumstances, I could be there in no time, but down the hall, in the nursery painted a soft sage green, Miles and Molly were asleep in their cribs. They were 20 months old. They could not be left alone. They could not wake up to an empty house, and I could not physically lift them, strap them into car seats, and drive myself to the hospital while I was losing consciousness. I needed help. I needed family. My parents lived 40 minutes away in the next town over. It was not close, but it was drivable. If they left now, they could be here by 3 a.m. I could call an ambulance, and they could meet the paramedics here. They could take over. They could sit in the living room while the twins slept and just be there. I dialed my mother, Marcia. The phone rang, and rang, and rang. Each ring felt like a physical blow. I sank to the floor, pulling the towel tighter, my vision graying at the edges. Please pick up, I whispered. Please, Mom. Finally, on the last ring before voicemail, the line connected. Hello? My mother's voice was thick with sleep, but beneath the grogginess, there was that familiar edge of irritation she always had when interrupted. Mom. I choked out. It's Abigail. Abigail. She sighed, a long, exasperated sound. Do you know what time it is? It is 2 a.m. Mom, please, listen to me, I said, fighting to keep the panic from making me incoherent. Something is wrong. I am bleeding. The doctor says I have to go to the hospital right now. It is bad. Mom, it is really bad. There was a silence on the other end. I expected a gasp. I expected the sound of her scrambling out of bed. I expected the maternal instinct that everyone talks about to kick in. Instead, she let out a breath that sounded like she was blowing smoke. Are you sure? Abigail, she asked. You know how you get. You always work yourself up. Remember when you thought Miles had asthma and it was just a cold? You tend to dramatize things. I stared at the blood on my hands. The room was spinning faster now. Mom, I am not dramatizing this, I said, my voice shaking. There is blood everywhere. I am losing the baby. I need to go to surgery. Ethan is in St. Louis. I need you to come watch the twins. They are asleep. You do not even have to do anything. Just sit in the house so they are not alone while the ambulance takes me. Please. I waited. I needed her to say we are on our way. Actually, we can't, she said. The words did not make sense. My brain, starved for oxygen and logic, could not process them. What I whispered, we are not home. Abigail, she said, her voice gaining a defensive sharpness. We are in Key Largo. Key Largo. I repeated, Florida. Yes, Florida, she snapped. We told you this. Bryce has the regional championships tomorrow. It is a huge opportunity for him. Scouts are going to be there. We drove down yesterday morning. My brother, Bryce, he was 26 years old, a semi-professional tennis player who had been chasing a breakthrough for 8 years. My parents had spent their retirement savings and a significant portion of my own contributions, funding his coaching, his travel, his gear, and his lifestyle. But you are in Florida, I said, the reality crashing down on me harder than the pain in my abdomen. Yes, my father's voice came on the line now. He must have been listening on speakerphone. Look, Abigail, we can't just leave. We paid for the hotel suite for the week. We paid for the entry fees. We are listed as premium sponsors in the program. That was $5,000. Abigail, if we leave now, we forfeit everything. We can't miss this match. Bryce needs our support. I sat on the cold tile, the phone pressed to my ear, feeling the life drain out of me in more ways than one. Dad, I said, my voice barely a whisper, I am hemorrhaging. The doctor said I might need surgery. The twins are alone. Well, call a neighbor, my mother said, dismissive and brisk, or call a taxi for yourself and take the kids with you. I am sure the hospital has a nursery or something. You are smart. Abigail, figure it out. We simply cannot drive 10 hours back right now. It is not feasible. But I started, a desperate plea dying in my throat. Stop making us feel guilty. Abigail. My father interrupted, his voice stern. We have invested too much in this weekend. Bryce is finally turning a corner. You have Ethan. You have a good job. You're always fine. Let us have this for your brother. Mom, I asked, one last attempt to reach the woman who had given birth to me. Look, lie down and put your feet up, my mother said, her tone softening into that fake, patronizing comfort I knew so well. It will probably stop. Go see the doctor in the morning when the clinic opens. Do not make a mountain out of a molehill. We need to get some sleep if we are going to be fresh for the match tomorrow. And then, the line went dead. I held the phone in front of my face, staring at the black screen. The silence in the bathroom was deafening. The only sound was the hum of the ventilation fan and the ragged sound of my own breathing. I looked down at the ruin of my pajamas. I looked at the bright red evidence of the life leaving my body. They were in Key Largo. They were sleeping in a hotel suite that I knew, with a sick certainty, I had helped pay for with the monthly transfer I sent them to help with bills. They were worrying about being fresh for a tennis match. They were worrying about a $5,000 sponsorship fee. I was bleeding out on my bathroom floor, terrified that my children would wake up orphans. And my parents had done the math. They had weighed the cost of a hotel room and a tennis tournament against my life and the safety of their grandchildren, and they had chosen the tennis tournament. A cold clarity settled over me, sharper than the pain, colder than the tile. It was a realization that froze the tears in my eyes. They were not stuck in traffic. They were not unable to come. They were refusing to come. I was entirely, completely alone. I lowered the phone. My hand was stained with blood. I looked at the contact name Mom on the screen one last time. They were not coming. I closed my eyes for a second, forcing the dizziness to recede. I could not pass out. Not yet. I had to survive. Not for them. Never again for them. But for Miles and Molly. I dragged myself up, gripping the sink, and prepared to do the only thing I could do. I prepared to save myself. The silence in the house was no longer peaceful. It was predatory. I was still on the bathroom floor, but the cold from the tiles had seeped into my marrow, making my teeth chatter in a way I could not control. I tried to stand, to reach the sink, but my legs felt like they were made of lead and water. I looked down. The towel I had grabbed was saturated, a heavy crimson weight in my hands, and the flow had not stopped. It had increased. I knew I had to move. I had to unlock the front door. I had to get help. But my mind was snagged on a jagged hook of denial. Surely, I had misunderstood. My parents were my parents. They could not have just left me here to bleed out while they slept in a hotel room funded by my salary. I dialed my mother one last time. It was a reflex, a child's instinct to reach for the hand that was supposed to catch her. She answered on the first ring this time, but her voice was sharp, stripped of any pretense of sleepiness. Abigail, stop calling, she said. I told you what to do. Put a pillow under your hips and elevate your legs. It is just spotting. You are working yourself up into a panic attack, and you are going to wake your father. We have a big day tomorrow. But Mom, I whispered, the room graying out at the edges. I can't stand up. Then crawl to bed, she said, her voice dismissive. Sleep it off. We will talk in the morning. Do not ruin this weekend for Bryce. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, the screen blurred, not from tears, but from the lack of oxygen reaching my brain. There was no ambiguity left. There was no misunderstanding. They knew I was in danger, and they did not care. The realization was sharper than the cramp that twisted my uterus. I wiped my face with the back of my hand, smearing blood on my cheek. I took a breath that rattled in my chest. That was it. That was the moment the cord was cut. I was not a daughter asking for permission anymore. I was a mother fighting to stay alive. I dialed 911. The operator's voice was calm, mechanical, and infinitely more comforting than my mother's had been. I gave her my address. I told her I was hemorrhaging. I told her I was pregnant. I told her the door was locked. I'm crawling to the door now. I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. Please hurry. The next 5 minutes were a blur of agony. I dragged myself across the bathroom tiles, through the bedroom, and into the hallway. Every inch of movement sent a fresh wave of warm blood between my legs. I left a trail on the hardwood floor, a gruesome marker of my progress. I reached the front door, pulled myself up by the handle, and twisted the lock just as I saw the red and white lights flashing silently through the transom window. When the paramedics burst in, the sudden noise and activity felt overwhelming. There were 2 of them, a man and a woman, moving with practiced efficiency. They were asking questions, checking my pulse, starting an IV line right there in the entryway. Ma'am, is there anyone else in the house? The female paramedic asked, her eyes scanning the empty living room. My babies, I gasped, gripping her arm. Upstairs. 2 of them. They are asleep. Is there an adult? She asked, her voice tight. Is your husband here? No. I said, no one, just me. The paramedics exchanged a look. It was a look of professional concern that terrified me more than the blood. They could not leave toddlers alone in a house, but they could not wait. My blood pressure was dropping rapidly. We need to transport you now, the male paramedic said. Do you have a neighbor, a friend, anyone who can come right this second? I shook my head. Our neighbors were elderly and hard of hearing. They would never hear the doorbell at 2:30 in the morning. My friends lived 20 minutes away. Then, a memory flashed in my mind. It was from 3 months ago. A visit from Ethan's mother, Lorraine. She had visited for the weekend, and before she left, she had pressed a thick, cream-colored card into my hand. Just in case, she had said, I know your parents are nearby, but sometimes you need professionals. My purse, I whispered, pointing to the console table. The card. Night Owl. The paramedic grabbed my purse and rummaged through it. Pulling out the card. Night Owl Care Network. Emergency 24-hour pediatric care. I snatched the phone from him. My fingers were slippery, and I could barely focus on the numbers. But I dialed. A woman answered immediately. Night Owl Emergency Care. This is Sarah. I need help. I stammered. Emergency. I am being taken to the hospital. 2 toddlers, 20 months old, alone in the house. The woman's voice shifted instantly. Address. I gave it to her. We have a team in Bridgewater, she said, the sound of typing furious in the background. For twins under 2 years old, without a parent present, our protocol requires a 2-provider team for safety. The rate is $80 an hour per provider, with a 6-hour minimum charge, plus an emergency dispatch fee of $200. We require a credit card on file before dispatch. It was an exorbitant amount of money. It was nearly $1,000 just to get them through the door. My parents would have scoffed. My parents would have told me to just leave the television on for them. Send them, I said, my voice fierce. Send them now. I pay. I rattled off my credit card number from memory, my vision tunneling. They are 5 minutes away, the woman said. Do not worry, Mrs. Price. We have the code to your garage keypad. Yes, I said, giving her the code. The paramedics were lifting me onto the gurney now. The world tilted. I felt the rush of cold night air as they wheeled me out of the house I had worked so hard to make perfect, the house that was now a crime scene of my own making. Wait, I said, clutching my phone. My babies. The Night Owl team just pulled into your driveway, the male paramedic said, nodding toward a sleek black sedan with a lighted sign on the dashboard that had just screeched to a halt behind the ambulance. 2 women in blue scrubs were already running toward the front door. I watched them enter my house. Strangers. I was entrusting my children to strangers because the people who shared my DNA were too busy sleeping in a luxury hotel suite. The ambulance doors slammed shut, sealing me in with the smell of antiseptic and the rhythmic beeping of the cardiac monitor. The siren wailed to life. a mournful sound that cut through the quiet neighborhood. I lay back, the IV fluid cold as it entered my vein. I should have been panicking about the surgery. I should have been weeping for the baby I was losing, and I was. The grief was a heavy stone in my chest, but there was something else rising alongside it, a clarity, a cold, hard rage that felt like armor. I lifted my phone again. The screen was bright in the dim ambulance. I opened my banking application. I had kept this secret from Ethan for 8 years. It was not that I lied to him, exactly. It was that I managed our finances, and I had simply categorized it under miscellaneous family support. I had told myself it was my duty. I had told myself that because I was successful, because I had a good job, I owed it to them. I navigated to the scheduled transfers tab. There it was. Mom and Dad. Support, frequency monthly. Amount $2,900. I stared at the number. $2,900. I had started sending it when I was 24, right after I got my first big promotion. Dad had lost his job, and Mom said they just needed a bridge to get by. Just for a few months. But a few months became a year. Then 2. Then Dad got a new job, but it paid less. Then the roof needed fixing. Then Bryce needed a new racket. Then the car broke down. $2,900 a month. I did the math in my head, the numbers floating in the haze of my shock. Over 8 years. That was nearly $280,000. I had bought them a house. I had bought them cars. I was currently buying them a suite in Key Largo and a premium sponsorship for a tennis tournament where my brother would likely lose in the quarterfinals. I thought about the night owl bill I had just authorized. I thought about how I had hesitated, even for a split second, because of the cost. I thought about my twins sleeping in their cribs, looked after by strangers. I thought about the baby inside me, the one who had stopped living, the one whose loss my mother had called drama. The pain in my abdomen ripped through me again. But this time, I welcomed it. It kept me sharp. I tapped the screen. Cancel recurring transfer. A dialog box popped up. Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring transfer? My thumb hovered over the button. For a second, I heard my mother's voice. You are the strong one. Abigail. You are the one who takes care of things. I am. I whispered to the empty air of the ambulance. I am taking care of things. I pressed, yes. The line disappeared, but I was not done. I was not going to let that money disappear back into the general fund where it could be spent on groceries or gas. That money was blood money now. It had cost me too much. I selected new transfer. I selected the recipient Miles and Molly, 529 college savings plan. I typed in the amount $2,900, frequency monthly. Start date today. I pressed confirm. The little green check mark appeared on the screen. Success. The paramedic looked down at me, adjusting the flow of the saline drip. You okay, ma'am? Your heart rate just spiked. I looked at him. My skin was gray. My pajamas were ruined, and I was on my way to have a dead child removed from my body. But for the first time in my life, I felt entirely free. I am fine, I said, and my voice was steady. I am just balancing the books. Bridgewater Regional Medical Center was a fortress of fluorescent light and sterile air, a stark contrast to the warm, dark chaos of my home. The transition from the ambulance to the emergency room gurney was a blur of voices and hands, shifting my body with a professional urgency that terrified me more than the pain. Dr. Evans, the on-call obstetrician, was a woman with kind eyes but a mouth set in a grim line. She did not waste time with soft platitudes. She looked at the ultrasound monitor, then at me, and her voice was level but heavy with bad news. Mrs. Price, the miscarriage is incomplete, she said. There is significant retained tissue, and because of the heavy bleeding you experienced at home, your blood pressure is unstable. We cannot wait for this to pass naturally. The risk of hemorrhage or infection is too high. We need to perform a dilation and curettage immediately to stop the bleeding. I nodded. I did not have the energy to speak, and honestly, I did not have the heart to ask if there was any hope. The silence on the ultrasound machine had already told me everything I needed to know. The little flicker of gray and white I had seen just 2 weeks ago was still, "Do whatever you have to do," I whispered. A nurse began prepping me for surgery, changing my gown and checking my IV lines. My phone, still clutched in my hand like a lifeline, buzzed. It was not my mother. It was Ethan. I answered, and the sound of his voice broke the dam I had built around my emotions. Abby, talk to me," he said. His voice was cracked, panic radiating through the connection. "The night owl service called me. They said they are at the house. They said you are in the ambulance. What is happening? I am in a cab. I am heading to the airport now. There is a flight at 5:30 in the morning. I will be there by 10. "Ethan," I said, and saying his name made the tears finally spill over. I lost the baby. There was a silence on the other end, a silence so profound it felt like the world had stopped spinning. Then, I heard a choked sound, a sob that he tried to stifle. "Oh God, Abby, I am so sorry. I am so sorry I'm not there. It is okay." I lied. My voice was thick. "You are coming. That is what matters." "The kids," he asked, his voice trembling. "They are safe," I said, forcing strength into my tone for him. "The night owl nurses are there. I authorized it. They are professionals. Miles and Molly are sleeping. They won't even know we are gone until they wake up. And the nurses will handle breakfast. I am coming." He repeated, desperate. "I'm coming right now. Don't be scared. I am not scared," I said, and it was true. I was past fear. I was in a place of cold, hard endurance. The nurse gently took the phone from my hand. "We need to go now." "Honey," she said softly. "I love you. I told Ethan. I love you," he said. The nurse ended the call and placed the phone in the clear plastic bag with my clothes. As they wheeled me out of the bay toward the operating theater, the bag sat on the foot of the gurney. Through the plastic, I saw the screen light up. It buzzed long and angry. Mom calling. It buzzed again and again. I watched the screen as we rolled down the corridor. She was calling back. Maybe she had realized the cruelty of her dismissal. Maybe she had felt a pang of maternal instinct. Or maybe, just maybe, she had received a notification from her bank that a scheduled deposit had been canceled, and she was calling to correct an administrative error. I closed my eyes. I did not want to know. The anesthesiologist placed a mask over my face. "Count backward from 10. He said, 10, 9, 8. The phone was still buzzing in the bag. 7, 6. I let the darkness take me. I let it swallow the pain, the blood, and the image of my mother's name lighting up a screen she only cared about when it served her. Waking up from anesthesia is not like waking up from sleep. It is like clawing your way out of a grave of wet sand. Sounds come first, distorted and metallic. Before vision returns, I was thirsty. My throat felt like it was lined with sandpaper. My lower body felt heavy and dull, a phantom ache replacing the sharp cramps from before. I blinked, trying to focus on the ceiling tiles. I was in a recovery room. The privacy curtain was drawn, but it was thin, and voices drifted through it from the hallway. They were loud, too loud for a hospital. "I need to see her. She is my daughter." The voice was my father's. It was booming, authoritative, the voice he used when he was trying to send back a meal at a restaurant. "And I am telling you, Mr. Price, that she is in recovery and she is resting." This second voice was different. It was female, lower in pitch, and composed of pure steel. It was a voice that did not shout, but commanded absolute attention by its very quietness. It was Lorraine. My heart gave a strange, fluttery kick. Lorraine lived in Chicago. How was she here? "Look, lady." My mother's voice joined the fray. Shrill and agitated. "We drove 4 hours from the airport to get here. We cut our trip short. We have rights. We are her parents. And I am her medical proxy," Lorraine said. Her voice did not waver. I turned my head on the pillow, wincing as the movement pulled at my IV line. I could see their silhouettes through the curtain. My father, large and imposing, my mother, gesturing wildly, and Lorraine, standing between them and my door like a sentinel. Medical proxy. My father scoffed. Since when Ethan is her husband? Ethan is in the air, Lorraine said, and before he took off, he called me. He authorized me to make decisions for Abigail and the children until he lands. And my first decision is that she needs rest, not a family reunion with people who could not be bothered to answer her call for help 6 hours ago. We did answer, my mother protested. We told her to wait until morning. She is the one who panicked and called an ambulance. She was hemorrhaging. Marcia, Lorraine said. The word was a blade. She lost a liter of blood. If she had waited until morning, you would be planning a funeral right now, not a visit. There was a silence in the hallway. I expected shame. I expected my parents to gasp, to lower their voices, to ask if I was going to be all right. Instead, my father cleared his throat. Well, she is stable now, isn't she? He asked. The doctor said she is stable. She is, Lorraine said coldly. Good, he said, because we need to speak to her. There is a matter we need to clear up. It is urgent. Is it? Lorraine asked. Yes, my mother added. There was a glitch with the bank, a technical error. We got an alert right after she went into the ambulance. We thought maybe her account was compromised. We need her to reauthorize the transfer before the weekend processing cutoff. I lay in the bed, staring at the ceiling. The tears that leaked from the corners of my eyes were hot and silent. They had not driven back because I was dying. They had driven back because the money had stopped. They had left the tennis tournament not out of love, but out of financial panic. I heard the rustle of paper. You are unbelievable, Lorraine said. Her voice was no longer professional. It was filled with a disgust so profound it felt physical. Excuse me, my father demanded. I am holding her phone. Lorraine said, Ethan asked me to keep it safe, and I'm holding the receipt from the night owl service she had to hire because you refused to come. And I am looking at the notification on her screen. Give me that phone, my mother snapped. Don't you take a step closer, Lorraine warned. The menace in her voice froze the air in the room. I have worked in obstetrics for 30 years. I have seen tragedies, and I have seen bad families. But you two, you are in a league of your own. Who do you think you are? My father blustered. I am the woman who just paid the $3,000 emergency childcare bill that you forced her to incur. Lorraine said, and looking at this transfer history, Abigail has been sending you $2,900 a month for 8 years. That is none of your business, my mother hissed. That is a private arrangement. We are family. She helps us. Helps you. Lorraine laughed, a dry, humorless sound. She supports you. You are both able-bodied adults. You have pensions. You have assets. And yet, you have been draining her dry. You live on your daughter's money. She owes us, my father shouted, losing his composure. We raised her. We sacrificed for her. She owes you nothing. Lorraine's voice rose, finally matching his volume. She just lost a child. She is lying in that bed, empty and bleeding, and you are standing here asking about a bank transfer. Lower your voice. A nurse said, coming down the hall. This is a hospital. Get them out of here, Lorraine said to the nurse. I am the designated proxy. I have the paperwork from her husband. These two are causing distress to the patient. They are to be removed from the floor immediately. You can't do that, my mother screeched. We are her parents. I can, and I am, Lorraine said. And if you try to enter this room, I will call security and have you escorted off the premises. You want to talk about money, fine. Go talk to a lawyer. But you are not speaking to Abigail. Not today. I heard the scuffle of feet, the indignant sputtering of my father, and the sharp, authoritative tone of the charge nurse backing Lorraine up. This is ridiculous. We will call Ethan, my mother yelled, as she was evidently being herded toward the elevators. Ethan knows exactly where you were last night. Lorraine called after them. Don't waste your breath. The sounds of their protest faded down the corridor, replaced by the hum of machinery and the soft tread of rubber-soled shoes. The curtain to my room was pulled back. Lorraine stood there. She looked impeccable, even after an emergency flight. She was wearing a structured blazer and dark slacks. Her silver hair pulled back in a severe, elegant bun, but her face was soft. Her eyes, usually so sharp and analytical, were swimming with tears. She walked to the side of the bed and placed her hand over mine. Her hand was warm and firm. "Abigail," she whispered, "are you awake?" "Yes," I croaked. She let out a long breath and pulled the chair close to the bed. She sat down, keeping her hand on mine, anchoring me to the room. "I am sorry," she said. "I am so sorry I was not here sooner. I was in Chicago for a conference. I caught the first flight out when Ethan called. You heard them." I whispered. The shame burned in my chest. "You heard everything." "I did," she said. She did not look away. She did not offer false comfort. She looked at me with a fierce, validating recognition. "And I am going to make sure they never get near you again while you are vulnerable. They just wanted the money." I said. "I canceled it. In the ambulance." "Good," Lorraine said. Her grip on my hand tightened. "Good for you. That was brave." "I don't feel brave." I said. "I feel empty." "I know," she said softly. She reached into her bag and pulled out my phone. She set it on the bedside table. "Face down. But you are safe. Miles and Molly are safe. I have a friend at the Night Owl Agency. She checked in on the sitters. They are making pancakes. Everything is under control." "Thank you," I said. She looked at me, her expression hardening slightly. Not at me, but at the situation. I signed the proxy forms. She said, "The nurses have instructions. Your parents are blocked. They cannot visit. They cannot call the room, if they show up. Security will handle it. You do not have to explain anything to them. You do not have to justify anything. You just have to heal." I closed my eyes, the exhaustion pulling me back under. "Lorraine," I asked. "I am here," she said. "Why did you stand up for me?" I asked. "My own mother wouldn't." Lorraine smoothed the hair back from my forehead. Her touch was gentle, a mother's touch, the kind I had been craving for 32 years. "Because, Abigail," she said, her voice shaking slightly, "I saw you lying there. I saw what you went through, and I heard them ask about a bank transfer before they asked if you were alive. That is not family. That is a parasite, and I will not let them feed on you any more." She sat back, crossing her legs, looking like a guardian statue placed at the gates of my recovery. "Sleep now," she commanded gently. "I will be here when you wake up." And for the first time that night, I believed that someone actually would be. Coming home from the hospital was not the relief I had expected. It felt less like returning to a sanctuary and more like walking into a museum of a life I no longer recognized. The house was exactly as I had left it 36 hours prior, yet the air inside felt stale, heavy with the phantom echoes of my own panic. The blood had been cleaned from the floor. Lorraine had done it before I arrived, but I still found myself stepping over that spot in the hallway, avoiding the invisible stain that only I could see. My physical recovery was a slow, grinding misery. My body felt hollowed out, a vessel that had been scraped clean. The cramping was a constant, dull ache, a reminder of the emptiness in my womb. I spent the first few days drifting between the bedroom and the living room, wrapped in a thick-knit blanket, feeling fragile as glass. Miles and Molly, with the terrifying intuition that toddlers possess, knew something was wrong. They did not run around screaming as they usually did. Instead, they became little shadows. Wherever I sat, they were there. Miles would press his small, warm cheek against my knee. Molly would bring me her stuffed rabbit, offering it silently as a consolation prize for a grief she could not understand. I would stroke their hair, my fingers trembling, grateful for their solid, demanding weight in my lap. They were the anchors keeping me from drifting away entirely. Lorraine was the captain of this sinking ship. She did not hover. She did not ask me how I was feeling every 5 minutes, which was a mercy I could not quantify. She simply existed in the background, a force of efficient, silent capability. She took over the kitchen, filling the fridge with containers of soup and cut fruit. She managed the twins' schedule, getting them down for naps without a single tear. She organized my pain medication on the nightstand, lining up the bottles with military precision. She was the mother I had needed that night, and having her here now was both a balm and a bitter reminder of what I had lacked in my own bloodline. Ethan had taken emergency leave from work. For the first time in our marriage, I saw him stripped of his corporate armor. He walked around the house in sweatpants, his eyes red-rimmed and shadowed. He spent hours just sitting next to me on the couch, holding my hand, staring at the wall. The anger in him was a palpable thing, a low-frequency hum that vibrated through the room. He had seen the transfer history. I had shown him the night I came home. I opened the laptop, logged in, and let him scroll through 8 years of monthly payments, $2,900, every single month. I watched his face as he did the math. I watched the realization sink in that the vacations we didn't take, the car we didn't upgrade, the stress I carried about our mortgage, all of it was because I was subsidizing his in-laws' country club lifestyle. He didn't scream. He didn't throw the laptop. He just closed the lid very gently, walked into the garage, and I heard the sound of him hitting the punching bag he hadn't used in years. Thud, 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 for an hour. My phone, which lay on the coffee table, lit up constantly. Mom, Dad, home, Bryce. I did not touch it. I had set a custom mode that silenced all notifications from them. But the screen still woke up with their persistence. They called in the morning, they called at lunch, they called at dinner. It was a barrage of digital noise. Ethan looked at the phone on the third day, his jaw tight. "Do you want me to block them?" he asked. "No," I said, my voice sounding rusty. "Not yet. I need to see what they do." What they did was change tactics. When calls and texts failed, they went analog. On Thursday, a letter arrived. It was in my mother's handwriting. That loopy, decorative script she was so proud of. It was on her personalized stationery. Heavy cream paper with embossed floral borders. Ethan brought it in from the mailbox, holding it by the corner as if it were contaminated evidence. "You don't have to open this," he said. "I do." I said. I sat up, wincing as my abdominal muscles protested, and took the envelope. I opened it. It smelled like her perfume gardenia and denial. "My dearest Abigail," it began, "we are so worried about you. We have been trying to call for days. We understand you are emotional right now, and we forgive you for the scene at the hospital. Lorraine was very rude to us, but we know she was just stressed, so we will overlook it for your sake. We just want to know you are okay. We are back from Key Largo. Bryce played well but was very distracted worrying about his big sister. We are all home now and would love to come see the twins. Also, sweetie, there seems to be a mistake with the bank. The usual transfer did not come through on the 1st. You know we rely on that for the mortgage and the payments on Bryce's new training facility membership. We have already allocated those funds. So please fix the error as soon as you can so we do not get hit with overdraft fees. We know you did not mean to cause us trouble. Love you to the moon and back. Mom and Dad." I read the letter twice. Then I handed it to Lorraine, who was folding laundry on the armchair. She read it, her expression unreadable. Then she looked up over her reading glasses. "We forgive you," she repeated, her voice flat. "They forgive you for almost dying on your bathroom floor. And they need the money for Bryce's gym membership," Ethan added, reading over her shoulder. He let out a dark, incredulous laugh. "They are actually asking for the money. In the same paragraph, they claim to be worried." I looked at the letter. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. It framed them as the benevolent, forgiving parents and me as the emotional, erratic child who had made a clerical error. It completely erased the reality of Tuesday night. "I am going to write back," I said. "Abby, you don't have to engage." Ethan said. "I am not engaging." I said, reaching for my laptop. "I am documenting." I did not write a letter. I did not use a salutation. I did not ask how they were. I opened a blank document and typed a list. It was cold, clinical, and devoid of adjectives. Timeline of events. Tuesday, October 14th, 2:07 in the morning, Abigail Price calls Marcia Price. Abigail reports heavy bleeding and medical emergency. Request for childcare assistance denied. 2:15 in the morning, Abigail Price calls Marcia Price. Request denied again. Reason given, tennis tournament in Key Largo. 2:30 in the morning, Abigail Price calls 911. 2:45 in the morning, Abigail Price hires Night Owl Emergency Care. Cost $3,200. 3:30 in the morning, Abigail Price enters surgery for incomplete miscarriage. 9 in the morning, Marcia and Robert Price arrive at hospital. First question asked. Status of monthly bank transfer. Conclusion. The monthly transfer of $2,900 has been permanently terminated. Do not ask again. I printed it out on plain white printer paper. I folded it once, shoved it into a standard business envelope, and addressed it. Ethan drove it to the post office. The reaction was swift. Since they could not reach me, and the letter made it clear I was not confused, they launched a campaign to control the narrative. My Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, messaged me on social media. Abigail, I heard Ethan is isolating you from your parents. Please call us. We are so worried. You are not yourself. My cousin texted, Why are you punishing your parents? Aunt Marcia is crying her eyes out. She says Lorraine has brainwashed you. I showed the messages to Ethan. They are saying I am controlling you, he asked, looking bewildered. Me? I didn't even know you were paying them. That is the point, I said, feeling a cold numbness settling in my chest where my heart used to be. If they admit I cut them off because they abandoned me, they look like monsters. If they say you forced me to cut them off, they are the victims of a controlling son-in-law. It is the only way they save face. It was a strategy I recognized. It was gaslighting on a familial scale. Ethan wanted to reply. He wanted to post the timeline on Facebook. He wanted to scream the truth from the rooftops. No, I told him, no public drama. That is what they want. They want to fight so they can cry about how mean I am. We give them nothing. Silence is the only thing they can't spin. But silence is hard when the walls are closing in. A week passed. I was physically stronger, able to walk around the block, able to sit at the table for dinner. But the emotional toll was mutating. The sadness was hardening into a profound distrust. I found myself double-checking everything. Did I lock the door? Did I pay the electric bill? Was the car insurance renewed? I felt exposed. If my own parents could view me as an ATM, who else was using me? It was in this mindset of hypervigilance that I opened my email on a Tuesday afternoon. I was clearing out the junk folder spam offers, newsletters, receipts. My eyes snagged on a subject line from a major credit card issuer. Welcome to your new Platinum Rewards account. I frowned. I assumed it was a phishing attempt. I hovered my mouse over the sender address. It looked legitimate. I clicked it open. Dear Abigail Price, congratulations on your approval. Your new card with a $20,000 limit has been mailed to the address on file. You can now access your account online. My stomach dropped. I had not applied for a credit card. We had frozen our credit years ago after the Equifax breach, only unfreezing it briefly when we bought the car. Ethan, I called out. He was in the kitchen, making tea. He came in. Seeing the look on my face, What is it? I turned the screen toward him. Did we open a card? Did you apply for something in my name? No, he said, leaning in. Absolutely not. I logged into the credit monitoring service we subscribe to. My hands were shaking so hard, I mistyped the password twice. When the dashboard loaded, a red alert banner stretched across the top. New account opened October 15th. October 15th, the day after the surgery. The day my parents were at the hospital. I clicked for details. The account was opened in my name, with my social security number, but the address was a P.O. box in Key Largo, Florida. I stared at the screen. The air left the room. Key Largo. Ethan made a sound that was half gasp, half growl. They opened a credit card. He said, his voice quiet and dangerous, in your name, while you were in the hospital, Lorraine, who had been reading a book in the corner, stood up. She walked over and looked at the screen. She did not look surprised. She looked vindicated. "I told you," she said softly. "I told you at the hospital." What I asked, my voice trembling. "I told you they were not just taking money." She said, "Abigail, look at the date. Look at the location. They knew the cash flow was stopping. You canceled the transfer in the ambulance. They likely got an alert or saw the pending cancellation. So they secured a backup source. Identity theft," Ethan said. His face was pale. "They committed identity theft against their own daughter." Lorraine placed a hand on my shoulder. It was heavy and grounding. "Con," she said, using the nickname she rarely used, "this is not a family dispute anymore. This is a crime." I looked at the computer screen. The limit was $20,000. If I hadn't seen this email, how much would they have spent? How much debt would they have racked up in my name while I was recovering from losing my baby? I thought about the letter. "We forgive you. We need the transfer." They were stalling. They were trying to get the cash back on while simultaneously setting up a line of credit behind my back. They were hedging their bets. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, but it wasn't sad. It was cold. "I am done," I whispered. Ethan looked at me. "What do you want to do?" "I want everything," I said. "I want my credit reports. I want the bank statements. I want every single piece of paper that has my name on it for the last 10 years. I looked at Lorraine. "You said to get a lawyer," I asked. She nodded. "The best one in the state." "Get them," I said, "and get the police involved." Ethan started to protest. "The police, Abby. They are your parents." I looked at my husband. I looked at the man who loved me, who would never steal from me, who would never leave me bleeding on a floor. "They are not my parents." I said, "They are strangers who know my social security number, and I am going to treat them exactly like that." Lorraine pulled out her phone. "I will call Samantha Keene." She said, "She is a shark. She eats people like this for breakfast." I turned back to the computer. I took a screenshot of the credit alert. I saved it to a new folder on my desktop. I named the folder Evidence. The grief was still there, a deep, bruising ache, but the fog was gone. I wasn't just a daughter anymore. I wasn't just a victim. I was a witness for the prosecution, and I was ready to testify. The phone rang at 7 in the evening. It was a time when the house usually settled into the chaotic, gentle rhythm of bath time and bedtime stories. But lately, the silence in our home was heavy enough to smother sound. I looked at the screen. Bryce. My brother had not called me in 3 months. His last text had been a photo of himself holding a trophy at a regional qualifier, with the caption, "On my way up." He did not ask how the twins were. He did not ask how my pregnancy was going. Bryce existed in a solar system where he was the sun, and the rest of us were merely planets, hoping to catch a bit of his reflected light. I looked at Ethan. He was sitting at the kitchen island, staring at the printouts of my credit report. Lorraine was next to him, highlighting suspicious transactions in neon yellow. "Put it on speaker," Ethan said. His voice was low, lacking its usual warmth. I tapped the green button and set the phone on the granite countertop. Abby Bryce's voice filled the kitchen. It was breathless, energetic, the voice of someone who had just stepped off a court. "Look, I finally got a minute to call. Mom and Dad are losing their minds over there." I said nothing. I just leaned against the counter, crossing my arms over my chest to hold myself together. "Seriously, sis," he continued, his tone shifting to that condescending, big brother lecture mode he loved to use, even though he was the one who still brought laundry home to Mom. "You need to dial it back. You are scaring them. Mom says you sent some crazy letter with a timeline and something about the police that is way too far. You are making a scene. Making a scene," I repeated. The words tasted like ash. "Is that what they told you?" "They said you are hormonal and grieving," Bryce said, sounding magnanimous. "And look, I get it. Miscarriages suck. I am really sorry about that. Truly. But you cannot just go nuclear on the family because you are emotional. They are terrified you are going to cut them off." I looked at Lorraine. She didn't blink. She just watched the phone like it was a venomous snake coiled on the table. "Bryce," I said, keeping my voice terrifyingly steady. "Do you know why I cut them off?" Because you are mad they didn't come home from Florida, he said, which honestly, Abby, is kind of selfish. This was the biggest tournament of the season. Scouts were there. I played out of my mind. I made the semifinals. If they had left, it would have thrown off my whole game. You know I need them in the box for morale. I felt a laugh bubbling up in my throat, but it wasn't a happy sound. It was the sound of something breaking. So my surgery was less important than your morale, I asked. It wasn't life or death. Right, he said. Dismissive. Mom said it was just a procedure. I nearly died. Bryce, I said, I lost a liter of blood on the bathroom floor. I had emergency surgery at 3 a.m, and when I called them, begging them to come watch Miles and Molly so I wouldn't have to leave them alone, Dad told me they had paid for a hotel room and couldn't waste the money. There was a pause on the line, a short, uncomfortable silence. Okay, that sounds bad when you say it like that, Bryce admitted. But you know how Dad is with money. They are on a fixed income. Abby, they panic about cash. They aren't like you and Ethan. They don't have corporate salaries. I closed my eyes. The blind spot was so massive it was almost impressive. Bryce, I asked, do you know how much money I send them? What he asked, I don't know. A couple $100 for groceries. I send them $2,900 a month. I said, the silence that followed was different. It was the silence of a worldview shattering. What Bryce asked, his voice cracked. 2,900. Every month, I said, for 8 years, since I was 24. No, he said, that is impossible. They told me they had investments. Dad said he made some smart moves with his severance package back in the day. They said they were comfortable. They lied. I said, they have been living on my salary. They have been paying the mortgage on the house you grew up in with my money. They have been paying for their cars with my money, and that hotel suite in Key Largo, the one they wouldn't leave because it was too expensive. I paid for that. Bryce, I paid for the bed they slept in while I was bleeding out. I watched Ethan's hands curl into fists on the table. His knuckles were white. There was a long, static-filled pause. I could hear Bryce breathing, the heavy, rhythmic breaths of an athlete trying to recover. I didn't know, he said finally. His voice was smaller. I know you didn't, I said, because if you knew, you might have felt guilty taking those checks they write you. They don't, he started, then stopped. Look, Abby, that is crazy. I admit that is crazy. But you have to understand their side. They are proud people. They didn't want to admit they were struggling. They aren't struggling, I snapped, losing my cool for the first time. Struggling people don't go to Key Largo. Struggling people don't drive a new SUV. They are leeches, Bryce, and they drained me until I almost died. Okay, calm down, Bryce said, shifting back to the peacemaker role, desperate to smooth over the jagged edges of reality. Look, obviously there was a miscommunication, but you can't just leave them high and dry. Mom is a mess. She says they have bills coming due next week that they can't cover without your transfer. Not my problem, I said. Abby, come on, he wheedled. Just for a few more months, just until they figure out a new budget. You guys are loaded. Ethan just closed that massive deal, right? And you are a senior analyst. You guys probably spend $3,000 on wine. Just help them out. Be the bigger person. Family is family. I looked at my kitchen. It was a nice kitchen. We had worked hard for it, but I looked at the medical bills piled on the counter next to the credit report. I looked at the shadow in the hallway where I had almost lost my life. I am not the bigger person anymore. I said, I am the person who is done. And frankly, Bryce, it is rich coming from you. What is that supposed to mean? He asked. Defensive. It means you are 30 years old. I said, you are a semi-pro athlete. You have sponsors. You teach private lessons at that elite club. You make 6 figures. Bryce, I know what the going rate is for a head pro. Why aren't you helping them? Why is the daughter with 2 toddlers and a dead baby paying the bills, while the son with the bachelor pad and the sports car gets a free ride? I have expenses, Bryce protested. My coaching fees alone are $4,000 a month. Travel, physio, nutrition. It takes a fortune to stay competitive at this level. I am investing in my future. Mom and Dad get that. They want me to succeed. They want you to look successful. I corrected. There is a difference. Whatever. He huffed. The point is, I can't carry them right now. I just dropped a huge chunk of cash on my image rebranding. New website, professional photo shoot, the whole PR package. I needed that deposit to lock in the agency before the Key Largo tournament, so I would look legit for the scouts. The air in the kitchen suddenly went very still. Ethan looked up. His eyes met mine. What did you say? I asked. My voice was very quiet. What Bryce asked. The PR package. Yeah, it is essential. You have to look the part to get the big endorsements. Where did you get the money for the deposit? I asked. Mom and Dad gave it to me. He said, casual as anything. It was a birthday gift. Sort of. An early investment. They gave me $5,000 last week to secure the agency. They said they had some extra liquidity this month. I felt the blood drain from my face. Last week I whispered, yeah, Tuesday, he said. Right before we drove down. Why Tuesday? The day of my miscarriage. The day my transfer hit their account. The math was so simple, so brutal. It felt like a physical blow. I sent them $2,900. They likely added a bit from their pension, bundled it up, and handed $5,000 to Bryce, so he could get headshots, so he could look legit. I was lying on a gurney, worrying about the cost of emergency childcare, and my money, the money I worked 60 hours a week for. The money I took from my own children's future was being used to pay for a photographer to take pictures of my brother holding a tennis racket. They didn't have extra liquidity. They had my paycheck. I couldn't breathe. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. It wasn't just greed. It was a hierarchy. I was the engine. Bryce was the hood ornament, and they would burn out the engine to keep the ornament shiny. Ethan stood up. The chair scraped violently against the floor. He walked over to the phone. He didn't pick it up. He leaned down, placing his hands flat on the counter, his face inches from the device. Bryce, Ethan said. His voice was terrifying. It was a deep, guttural rumble I had never heard before. Ethan Bryce sounded confused. Is that you? You listen to me, you arrogant little prick. Ethan said, Whoa, hey. Uncalled for, Bryce started. Shut up, Ethan roared. The sound made me flinch. You shut your mouth and you listen. My wife, who almost died, has been funding your lifestyle for a decade. Every dollar she sent them, they funneled to you. You are not a self-made athlete. You are a charity case. And the charity is Abigail. Ethan, stop. I don't know what you are talking about. That $5,000, Ethan continued, his voice shaking with rage. That was our money. That was the money intended to keep a roof over your parents' heads. And they gave it to you for pictures, Bryce. While Abigail was paying $3,000 for emergency nurses because they wouldn't come help her, Ethan took a breath. And when he spoke again, his voice was deadly calm. If you ever ask her for money again, if you ever tell her to be the bigger person again, I will personally fly to wherever you are and I will break your nose. Do you understand me? There was dead silence on the line. Bryce was stunned into mute shock. Ethan looked at me. He nodded, signaling he was done. I picked up the phone. My hand wasn't shaking anymore. You heard him. Bryce, I said, Abby, I didn't know the money came from you. I swear. It doesn't matter if you knew. I said, you know now. And here's the new reality. Mom and Dad are broke. They are broke because I stopped the payments. And they are going to come to you. They are going to ask you for the mortgage. They are going to ask you for the car payments. I can't afford that. Bryce panicked. I told you my overhead is too high. Then you have a choice. I said, you can cut your overhead, fire your coach, cancel the photo shoot, sell the sports car, or you can let them sink. Abby, you can't do this. This is cruel. No, Bryce. I said, this is just economics. The Bank of Abigail is closed. Permanently. But what do I tell them? He asked, his voice rising in desperation. They are calling me every hour. Tell them what they told me. I said. What? Tell them to figure it out. I said, tell them not to be dramatic. I moved my thumb to the red button. Abby, Wait. Don't hang up. We need to discuss if you want to save them. Bryce, I said, delivering the final line with the weight of 8 years of betrayal behind it. You start by using your own money. I ended the call. The kitchen was silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Ethan let out a long, shaky breath and rubbed his face with his hands. I am sorry, he said. I lost my temper. Don't be, I said. I walked over to him and wrapped my arms around his waist. Pressing my face into his chest, I needed that. I needed someone to say it. Lorraine cleared her throat. She was still sitting at the table, the neon highlighter in her hand. She looked at the screen of her laptop, then up at us. Well, she said, her voice dry. That explains the cash withdrawals on your father's bank statements I found in the trash bin when I was snooping last Christmas. I always wondered where that money went. I thought it was gambling. Turns out, it was just Bryce. She closed the folder in front of her. But we are not done, she said. I pulled away from Ethan and looked at her. What do you mean? Lorraine tapped the paper on the table. The credit report. Your brother is an idiot, she said. But he is a useful idiot. He just confirmed that your parents received your transfer on the 1st. And he confirmed they had extra liquidity on the 14th. But this credit card. She pointed to the entry for the fraudulent account. It was opened on the 15th, the day after the surgery, the day after I told them off in the hospital, so I asked. So, Lorraine said, her eyes narrowing, if they gave Bryce all their liquid cash for his photo shoot, they had nothing left. They were tapped out, and they knew you were cutting them off because of the fight. She looked at me, and her expression was grave. They didn't open this credit card to pay bills. Abigail. They opened it to replace the income stream they just handed to your brother. They stole your identity because they prioritized his vanity over your financial survival. They didn't just borrow your name. They franchised it. I felt the anger settle in my gut, heavy and permanent. Let's call the lawyer. I said, it is 7:30 at night. Ethan said, I don't care. I said, call Samantha Keene. Tell her we are ready to go to war. And tell her to add Bryce to the witness list, because I was done protecting any of them. If they wanted to play games with my livelihood, I would make sure the game ended with them losing everything, starting with their secrets. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday, exactly 4 weeks to the day since I had been wheeled out of my house on a stretcher. It was delivered by a courier who required a signature. Standing on my porch with a boredom that contrasted sharply with the grenade he was handing me, the return address was for a law firm I did not recognize, Holloway & Associates. I sat at the kitchen table, the heavy cream paper trembling slightly in my hands. The letter was addressed to me, but it felt like an indictment of my entire existence. I read the legal jargon, my brain struggling to translate the sterile, aggressive language into the reality of my life. Re-breach of verbal contract and abandonment of financial obligation. Dear Mrs. Price, we represent your parents, Marcia and Robert Price. It has come to our attention that you have unilaterally terminated a long-standing financial agreement, upon which our clients have reasonably relied for their essential living expenses and maintenance. This monthly stipend of $2,900, established by verbal agreement and consistent performance over a period of 96 months, constitutes a binding contract. Furthermore, your sudden cessation of support, without notice or severance, has caused our clients significant financial distress and emotional anguish. We are demanding the immediate reinstatement of the monthly transfer, along with back pay for the missed month of November, and a formal written agreement guaranteeing support for the next 5 years. Failure to comply will result in further legal action to recover damages for detrimental reliance. I put the letter down. The room was silent, but my ears were ringing. They were suing me. My parents, who had refused to drive 40 minutes to watch my children while I underwent emergency surgery, were suing me because I had stopped paying them an allowance. They had weaponized my generosity. They had taken 8 years of my kindness, my desire to be a good daughter, and twisted it into a legal shackle. Ethan walked in, saw my face, and picked up the letter. He read it standing up. His face went a terrifying shade of red, the veins in his neck standing out. Detrimental reliance, he whispered, his voice shaking with a rage so profound it sounded like a growl. They are claiming detrimental reliance because they relied on you to pay for their country club life. They want back pay. I said, my voice flat. They want me to pay them for the month I spent recovering from the miscarriage. Ethan crumpled the envelope, though he left the letter itself pristine. We are getting a lawyer, he said. Today, we did not go to a family lawyer. We went to a litigator. Samantha Keene was a woman who looked like she was carved out of granite and dressed in Italian silk. Her office was in downtown Charlotte, on the 42nd floor, with a view that made the cars below look like toys. She did not offer us tea. She did not ask about my feelings. She sat behind a desk that was completely empty except for my parents' letter and a legal pad. She read the letter in silence. The only sound in the room was the hum of the air conditioning and the scratching of her fountain pen as she made notes in the margins. Finally, she looked up. Her eyes were gray and utterly unamused. This is a shakedown, she said. I know. I said, but it is a dangerous one, she continued. In North Carolina, verbal contracts can be binding if they can prove an exchange of services or goods. Did they provide you with anything in exchange for this money? Did they watch your children? Did they manage your property? Did they provide care? No. I said, it was a gift. I started it when my dad lost his job. I just never stopped. Gifts are revocable, Samantha said. Contracts are not. They are trying to frame 8 years of charity as an employment contract. They are claiming that by paying them consistently, you created a legal expectation of future income. She leaned back, tapping the pen against her chin. I need everything. Abigail, I need you to go back 8 years. I need bank statements showing every single transfer. I need text messages where they asked for money. I need emails where they thanked you for the help or the gift. We need to establish that the language used was always about assistance, not obligation. I can do that, I said, and I need the night of October 14th, she added, the night of the surgery. Lorraine, who had come with us and was sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up. I have that, she said. She reached into her large leather tote bag and pulled out a manila folder. Lorraine placed it on Samantha's desk. This is the intake record from the emergency room, Lorraine said, her voice crisp. Admitting diagnosis, incomplete abortion with hemorrhage. Time of arrival, 2:45 in the morning. Estimated blood loss, 1,000 milliliters. This is the surgical report. And this, she slapped a second document on top of the pile. This is the invoice from Night Owl Care Network. Timestamp, 2:35 in the morning. Authorization by Abigail Price. Reason for service, emergency medical transport. No family available. Samantha picked up the Night Owl invoice. She looked at the date. She looked at the timeline I had drafted earlier. So, she said, a slow, shark-like smile spreading across her face. At the exact moment they claim you were abandoning your obligations. You were paying $3,000 to strangers because the plaintiffs refused to assist you. Yes, I said, and they knew, Samantha asked. They knew you were in surgery. They knew. I said, I called them twice. Samantha closed the file. Okay, she said, we are not just going to dismiss this. We are going to obliterate it. The next week was a blur of forensic accounting. I sat at my dining room table, surrounded by stacks of paper. I printed out 8 years of bank statements. I highlighted every transfer in yellow. The total was staggering. $278,400. I found the texts. May 2018, Mom. Abby, honey, the car insurance is due and we are a little short. Can you send the transfer a few days early? You are an angel. December 2021. Dad. Hey kid. Great Christmas. Thanks for the bonus. Really helped with the heating bill. August 2023. Mom, Bryce needs new gear. Maybe you could add a little extra this month, just as a favor. An angel. A bonus. Never a salary. Never a payment due. I compiled it all. I took screenshots. I organized them by year. Lorraine worked on the medical side. She requested my full chart. She got a sworn affidavit from the Night Owl agency confirming the distress call. She even tracked down the call log from my cell provider, showing the 2 calls to my mother's number at 2:07 and 2:15 a.m., followed immediately by the call to 911. We handed it all to Samantha. 3 days later, Samantha sent the response. It was not a polite letter, it was a legal evisceration. To Mr. Stephen Holloway, regarding your clients, Marcia and Robert Price. There is no contract. There has never been a contract. The payments totaling nearly $300,000 over 8 years were voluntary inter vivos gifts from a daughter to her parents. Under North Carolina law, a gift requires donative intent, delivery, and acceptance. We have 8 years of digital correspondence in which your clients refer to these payments as help, gifts, and favors. Furthermore, your client's claim of detrimental reliance is nullified by their own conduct. On the night of October 14th, when my client requested non-monetary assistance during a life-threatening medical emergency, your clients refused. Citing a recreational trip funded by my client's previous gifts, my client is under no legal, moral, or ethical obligation to continue supporting 2 able-bodied adults who have demonstrated a gross negligence for her well-being. The payments have ceased. They will not resume. Any further harassment of my client will be met with a motion for a permanent restraining order and a countersuit for intentional infliction of emotional distress. Attached is a timeline of the night in question, including medical records indicating my client was in surgery while your clients were, by their own admission, sleeping in a hotel room she paid for. Govern yourself accordingly. Samantha Keene. We waited. The silence that followed was heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. 2 days later, Samantha called me. "Abigail," she said, her voice sounding unusually bright. "You are not going to believe this." "What happened?" I asked, gripping the phone. "Did they file the lawsuit, Mr. Holloway just called me," she said. "He is withdrawing from the case." I blinked. "He is what?" "He is firing them as clients." Samantha said, "Apparently, Marcia and Robert omitted a few key details when they retained him. They told him you stopped paying because you had a fight. They didn't tell him the fight was because you were hemorrhaging and they refused to help. They didn't tell him about the surgery, and they certainly didn't show him the text messages where they thanked you for your charity. He didn't know I asked. He had no idea." She said. He sounded mortified. He thought he was representing 2 poor pensioners who had been defrauded by a wealthy, a stranger daughter. When he saw the medical records and the Night Owl invoice, he realized he was being used to harass a trauma survivor. He dropped them effective immediately. I felt a weight lift off my chest, but it was quickly replaced by a cold realization. They lied to their own lawyer. I said, "Pathological liars usually do." Samantha said, "But listen, Abigail, this isn't over. They lost their legal leverage, which means they are going to get desperate. People like this don't just go away, they pivot." She was right. The legal threat vanished. But the public relations war began the next morning. It started on Facebook. My mother didn't name me directly, she was too cunning for that, but she posted a long, rambling status update with a background of a crying angel. It is a sharp sword to raise a child. Give them everything. Sacrifice your own golden years, only to be cast aside when you are old and struggling. Some people let money change them. Some people forget where they came from. We are heartbroken to be cut out of our grandchildren's lives over a misunderstanding. Pray for us. The comments section was a cesspool of sympathy from her church friends and distant relatives. "So sorry, Marcia. Kids these days are so ungrateful. Stay strong." Then came the flying monkeys. My cousin Sarah, who I hadn't spoken to in 2 years, called me at work. "Abigail, look, I don't know what is going on, but Aunt Marcia is a wreck." She said, "She called my mom crying. She said you have a high-powered lawyer bullying them. She said they can't even buy groceries." I hung up. I blocked her number. My uncle sent an email. "Your father is a proud man. You are humiliating him. Fix this." I forwarded it to the folder named Harassment Log. I was shaking by the time I got home. I felt besieged. I felt like I was being hunted in my own life. Lorraine was waiting for me. She had the dining room table covered in binders. She had gone to an office supply store. There were 3 large black binders, each 3 inches thick. "What is this?" I asked, dropping my purse. "This," Lorraine said, patting the stack, "is the truth." She opened the first binder. It was organized with colorful tabs: financial history, medical emergency, harassment, credit fraud investigation. "I have printed everything," Lorraine said. "Every email, every bank statement, every text message you sent to Samantha. I have organized it chronologically. I have highlighted the lies." She pointed to a section titled, "The Lie of Poverty." I cross-referenced their requests for money with their social media posts. Lorraine explained, "See here, August 12th. They asked for $500 for car repairs. August 14th, your mother posted a photo of a new designer handbag. November 3rd, they asked for help with the heating bill. November 5th. Bryce posts a picture of them at a steakhouse in Charleston. I looked at the pages. It was irrefutable. It was a catalog of manipulation. "Why are we doing this?" I asked. "They already lost the lawyer." "Because they are winning the story," Lorraine said. "They are out there telling everyone you are a monster, and right now, you are staying silent because you have dignity. But dignity doesn't protect you from a mob." She closed the binder with a solid snap. "If they want to drag you through the mud, we are going to build a sidewalk over it," she said. "If any relative calls you, if any friend asks you why you are being so cruel, you do not argue, you do not cry. You hand them a copy of this binder." She looked at me, her eyes fierce. "If they want a paper war, Abigail, we will give them paper. We will bury them in it." I ran my hand over the black plastic cover. It felt cold. It felt solid. It felt like a shield. Samantha called again later that afternoon. "Abigail, one more thing," she said. "Yes, I got a call from the bank regarding that credit card investigation you initiated." She said, "The one in Key Largo." My stomach tightened. "Yes, the bank's fraud department is taking it very seriously," she said. "They have flagged the IP address used to open the account. It traces back to the Wi-Fi at the Ocean Reef Resort in Key Largo." "The hotel," I whispered. "The hotel you paid for." Samantha confirmed. "And Abigail, the application listed a cosigner." Who, I asked. Though I already suspected, it listed a Bryce Price as an authorized user. She said, "But the signature doesn't match his exemplars. It looks like your mother signed for him too. They used us both." I said, "It looks that way." Samantha said, "This moves it from civil fraud to criminal identity theft and forgery. The bank is legally required to file a police report." "Do it." I said. "Are you sure?" Samantha asked. "Once this starts, there is no stopping it. We are talking about potential felony charges for your parents." I looked at the binder on the table. I looked at the section Lorraine had labeled medical emergency. I thought about the blood on the floor. I thought about the silence on the phone when I begged for help. They made their choice. I said, "Now let them explain it to a judge." The silence in Dr. Aris's office was different from the silence in my house. At home, the silence was heavy, loaded with the things Ethan and I were afraid to say to each other. Here, in this room, with the beige armchairs and the white noise machine humming in the corner, the silence was expectant. It was waiting for an answer I did not want to give. We had been coming to therapy for 3 weeks. Initially, it was for the grief. We needed a place to put the anger and the sadness about the baby we had named privately. Just between us, Leo. But like everything else in my life, the grief was inextricably tangled with the people who had caused it. Dr. Aris, a woman with sharp eyes and a voice like warm tea, looked at me over her glasses. "I asked you a question, Abigail," she said gently. "Why did you keep paying?" I picked at a loose thread on the throw pillow in my lap. "Because they needed it," I said. It is the same answer I had given the first 2 sessions. Because Dad lost his job in 2017. Because Mom has arthritis. Because they are my parents. Doctor. Eris didn't write anything down. She just waited. Ethan shifted in the chair next to me. His hand was on my knee, warm and grounding. Abigail, doctor, Aris said, you are a senior financial analyst. You deal in risk and return. You deal in logic. If a company you were analyzing had an investment that drained capital for 8 years with zero return and active toxicity, what would you recommend? I would recommend liquidation. I said immediately, so why was this different? She asked. I opened my mouth to say, because it is family. But the words died in my throat. That excuse didn't work anymore. Not after the night owl invoice. Not after the lawsuit. I don't know. I whispered. I think you do, she said. She handed me a clipboard and a pen. I want you to make a list, she said. On the left side, I want you to write down everything you have given them in the last 10 years. Money, yes, but also time, emotion, labor, worry. I took the pen. I started writing. $278,000. Planning their anniversary parties. Mediating their fights. Listening to mom complain about dad for hours. Helping Bryce with his college applications. Fixing their computer every weekend. Holding my tongue when they criticized Ethan. Canceling vacations because they had a crisis. The list went halfway down the page. My hand cramped. Now, doctor, Eris said, on the right side, write down what you received in return, not what you hoped for, what you actually got. I stared at the blank white space. I thought about the night of the surgery. Stop being dramatic. I thought about my wedding. Why did you pick such a cheap venue? I thought about my promotion. Now you can help us more. I wrote criticism. Being told I am too sensitive. Being told I am selfish. Anxiety. The feeling that I am an ATM. Silence when I needed help. I looked at the 2 columns. The disparity was so violent it made me nauseous. The left side was a monument of effort. The right side was a handful of gravel. I handed the clipboard back to her. You were buying your place in the family. Doctor, Aris said softly. She placed the clipboard on the ottoman between us. You have spent your entire adult life believing that if you just paid enough in cash, in patience, in silence, you would finally earn the right to be loved as much as your brother. You thought you were the provider. But really, Abigail, you were the fixer. You were the patch on the tire that they kept driving on until it burst. I started to cry. It wasn't the hysterical crying of the hospital. It was a quiet, leaking grief. It was the mourning of a hope I hadn't realized I was still holding on to. I just wanted them to be proud of me. I said, they were proud of what you did for them. She said, not of who you were. There is a difference. Ethan squeezed my knee so hard it hurt. I am sorry, he said. His voice was thick. I turned to look at him. He was crying too. I am so sorry I let it go on this long. He said, I saw the checks. I saw how drained you were after every phone call. I told myself it was your business, that I shouldn't interfere with your family dynamics. But I should have stepped in. I should have asked these questions 5 years ago. I let you carry this load alone because it was easier than fighting with them. I reached out and wiped a tear from his cheek. We were both asleep. I said, now we are awake. Being awake was painful, but it was productive. We left the therapist's office and went straight to a diner. We ordered coffee and pancakes, and for the first time in weeks, we talked about the future without panic. We need new rules. I said, agreed. Ethan said. He pulled out a notebook. Rule number 1, total financial transparency, no more hidden accounts, no more miscellaneous categories. If we spend more than $200, we discuss it. Agreed. I said, rule number 2, we prioritize our nuclear family. You, me, Miles, Molly, everyone else is a guest in our lives. Not a board member. We spent the next week building a fortress around our life. It wasn't made of stone. It was made of paper. We met with an estate attorney. We updated our wills. We created a living trust for the twins. And then came the hardest conversation, guardianship. The lawyer said, if something happens to both of you, who takes the children? Before October 14th. I would have said my parents. It would have been a reflex. Now, The thought of Miles and Molly being raised by Marcia and Robert Price made my blood run cold. They would use my children as leverage. They would spend their trust fund on tennis lessons for a great nephew. They would teach them that love is a transaction. Lorraine, I said. Ethan nodded. My mom? Definitely. And if she is too old, the lawyer asked. My best friend. Jessica, I said. She lives in Seattle. She is kind. She is sane. She knows what happened. We signed the papers. We put in a specific clause. Under no circumstances are Marcia or Robert Price to have custody or unsupervised visitation with the minor children. Signing that document felt like closing a heavy iron door. It was final. It was safe. Lorraine was waiting for us when we got home. She was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for a stew. The house smelled of rosemary and beef, a rich, grounding scent. She didn't ask how the meeting went. She just poured us 2 glasses of water. The kids are in the backyard, she said. They found a worm. It is a very exciting afternoon. I looked at her. Lorraine had been living with us for a month. She had slept in the guest room. She had driven me to follow up appointments. She had fielded calls from Samantha, but she had never tried to be my mother. She hadn't tried to hug away the pain or tell me what to do. She had simply stood behind me. She was like a retaining wall holding back the landslide so I could rebuild the house. Thank you, I said. For the water, she asked, smiling slightly. For not trying to fix me, I said. She put down the knife and wiped her hands on a towel. You don't need fixing. Abigail, she said. You just needed reinforcement. You are the strongest woman I know. You just had the wrong people leaning on you. I walked over and hugged her. It wasn't a desperate cling. It was an embrace of equals. We implemented the digital blockade that night. Samantha had advised us to keep one channel open for legal correspondence, so we didn't block their emails. But we set up a filter that sent everything from my parents and Bryce directly to a folder that only Samantha had access to. On my phone, I went through my contacts. Aunt Linda. Block. Cousin Sarah. Block. Uncle Jerry. Block. Each tap of the screen felt like cutting a thread. These were people I had known my whole life. People who had been at my wedding. People whose birthdays I had memorized. But they were also people who had called me cruel for refusing to bankrupt myself. They were people who had chosen the comfortable lie over the difficult truth. I didn't offer explanations. I didn't send a final dramatic text. I just vanished from their digital world. If they wanted to reach me, they could talk to Samantha Keene, and Samantha charged $400 an hour. I figured that would keep the conversation brief. By Friday, I felt a strange lightness. The noise was gone, the constant buzzing of my phone, the dread of the next guilt trip, the anticipation of the next request for money. It had all evaporated. I sat in my home office, looking at the clean desk. I had my work computer open. I was finally catching up on the backlog from my leave. I decided to do a routine check. It was part of the new, transparent and vigilant Abigail. I logged into the credit monitoring service. I wanted to see if the police report regarding the Key Largo credit card had been processed. Samantha said it might take a few weeks to show up as a dispute. But I wanted to be sure. The dashboard loaded. The credit score was still recovering from the hit of the hard inquiry from the fraudulent card. But it was stable. I clicked on the Accounts tab. I scrolled past our mortgage, past our legitimate joint credit card, past the car loan. Then I stopped. At the bottom of the list, under the section labeled Installment Loans, there was an entry I didn't recognize. Lender Sunshine State Equity Partners. Type Secured Personal Loan. Date opened August 12th, 2023. Balance $45,000. I stared at the screen. August 12th. That was 3 months ago. That was 2 months before the miscarriage. I clicked on the details. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. A fast, terrified rhythm. Collateral deed of trust. My mouth went dry. A secured loan meant there was collateral. It meant something of value had been pledged to guarantee the debt. I read the address listed for the collateral. It wasn't my house in Bridgewater. It was 104 Maple Street, Pineville, North Carolina, my parents' house. I sat back, confused. Why would a loan on my parents' house be on my credit report? Unless I grabbed the mouse and clicked deeper into the loan documents that had been uploaded to the file. The PDF opened. It was a scanned copy of a loan agreement. I saw the signatures at the bottom, Marcia Price, Robert Price, and there, next to them, was a third signature, Abigail Price. It was a scrawl. It looked vaguely like my signature, but the loop on the P was wrong. The slant was too steep. I read the text above the signatures. Co-signer/guarantor agreement. The undersigned, Abigail Price, agrees to be jointly and severally liable for the full amount of the principal and interest. I felt the room tilt. They hadn't just opened a credit card in Key Largo, back in August. When they asked for extra money for car repairs, they had evidently needed much more than that. They had taken out a high-interest private equity loan against their house, and because their credit was likely shot, they had forged my name as the co-signer. I looked at the date again, August 12th. I remembered that week. We had been at the beach with the twins. I had been happy. I had been pregnant and didn't know it yet. And while I was building sandcastles with Miles and Molly, my parents were sitting in a loan office, tracing my signature onto a document that put me on the hook for $45,000. But that wasn't the worst part. I looked at the payment history. September paid, October missed, November missed. The loan was in default. I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. If the loan was in default, and I was the guarantor. My phone rang. It was Samantha. "Abigail," she said. Her voice was sharp, urgent. "I just got an alert from the court docket system. I'm looking at it." I whispered, staring at the screen. "The loan. The $45,000 loan." "No," Samantha said. "It is worse than just the loan report." "What do you mean?" I asked. "I just got served with a notice," she said. "Sunshine State Equity Partners isn't just reporting it to the credit bureau. They have filed a lawsuit for foreclosure and judgment." "Foreclosure?" I asked. "On my parents' house." "Yes," Samantha said, "but because you are listed as the guarantor. They aren't just coming for the house in Pineville. They are naming you as a defendant. They are coming for your assets to cover the difference." I gripped the edge of the desk. "They forged my signature." I said, "I was at the beach. I have photos." "We will prove that," Samantha said. "But Abigail, this means this wasn't just a desperate grab in Key Largo. This was premeditated. They have been using your identity to prop up their entire existence for months." I looked at the signature on the screen. It was so shaky. It looked like my father's handwriting trying to be mine. They didn't just want my monthly allowance. They wanted to drag me down with them. I hung up the phone. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I printed the document. I walked out to the kitchen where Lorraine was stirring the stew and Ethan was feeding the twins. They looked up, smiling. I placed the paper on the counter. "Call the police back," I said, "and tell them to bring handcuffs." Winter in Bridgewater gave way to a hesitant spring. And with the thawing earth came a secret I carried with the fragility of a soap bubble. I was pregnant again, for the first 4 months. I did not live in my body. I haunted it. Every twinge in my lower back sent a jolt of adrenaline through my veins that tasted like battery acid. Every trip to the bathroom was a negotiation with terror. My hands shaking as I checked for the red stain that had destroyed my world the previous October. I moved through my days with a careful, rigid precision, as if stepping too hard might shatter the delicate process knitting itself together inside me. We told no one, not our friends, not the neighbors, certainly not the relatives I had blocked on every digital platform. The circle of knowledge was a triangle: Ethan, myself, and Lorraine. Lorraine became the keeper of the anxiety. When I woke up at 3 a.m, convinced that the lack of nausea meant something was wrong, I didn't wake Ethan. I went downstairs, where Lorraine was usually reading in the solarium. She would look up, see the panic in my eyes, and simply make tea. She never told me to calm down. She never told me to think positive thoughts. She just sat with me in the dark until my breathing synchronized with the ticking of the grandfather clock. The turning point came at the 20-week anatomy scan. Dr. Evans was the one holding the transducer. She knew the history. She knew about the hemorrhage, the surgery, and the trauma that lived in my medical chart like a ghost. The room was dim and quiet, the only sound the hum of the machine. Ethan was gripping my left hand so hard his knuckles were white. Lorraine stood by my feet. Her presence a silent fortress. I squeezed my eyes shut. I could not look at the screen. I was waiting for the silence. I was waiting for the apology. And then, the sound filled the room. It was a galloping rhythm, fast and strong and undeniable. Swish, swish, swish. You can open your eyes. Abigail. Doctor, Evans said, her voice smiling. He is perfect. I opened my eyes. On the monitor, a grainy gray profile was sucking its thumb, a spine curled like a string of pearls. A heart pulsed with a vigorous, stubborn life. I whispered, a boy. Ethan choked out, tears streaming down his face. I began to weep. It was not a pretty cry. It was a guttural release, a shaking sob that expelled months of held breath. Lorraine reached out and placed her hand on my ankle. She didn't say a word, but the weight of her hand told me, we are here. This is real. But secrets in the South are like water. They always find a leak. I was 28 weeks along when the bubble burst. I had been careful. I wore loose clothes. I avoided social gatherings. But a cousin of a cousin had seen me at the prenatal clinic. Or perhaps a pharmacy technician had talked. The network of gossip was faster than fiber optics. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning. It bypassed the spam filter because my mother had created a new address, something innocent sounding like Garden Club Marcia, specifically to evade my digital walls. The subject line read, "We know." My hands went cold. I clicked it open. Abigail, we heard the news. We are hurt that you did not tell us yourself, but we are willing to overlook this slight because a new baby is a blessing for the whole family. We have already told the church group and the neighbors. Everyone is so excited for us. We know you are still being stubborn about the money and the lawsuits, but surely you will not keep us from our grandson. We have rights as grandparents. We have cleared our schedule for your due date. We will be at the hospital to support you. Do not try to stop us. This is about family, and we will be there to welcome him properly. Mom. I read the email 3 times. The entitlement was breathtaking. There was no mention of the $45,000 fraudulent loan we were currently litigating, no mention of the identity theft investigation, no mention of the fact that the last time I was in a hospital, they had abandoned me. Just a demand. We will be there. I felt the panic rising, that old familiar constriction in my throat. Ethan walked in, saw my face, and took the laptop. He read the email, his jaw set in a hard line. They are not coming anywhere near you, he said. They said they will be there. I whispered. They will make a scene. They will stress me out. Doctor. Evan said my blood pressure is already creeping up. Ethan picked up the phone. Get your coat, he said. Where are we going? We are going to the hospital, he said. Not to the delivery ward, to the legal department. We met with the director of patient safety and the head of security at Bridgewater Regional. We brought the binder. Lorraine sat next to me, sliding documents across the polished mahogany table with the precision of a card dealer. Here is the active lawsuit for fraud, Lorraine said. Here is the police report for identity theft. Here is the letter from their previous attorney withdrawing due to their deceit. And here is the email threatening to trespass. The head of security, a man named Mr. Henderson, who looked like he could stop a tank with one hand, looked at the email. Do not try to stop us. He read aloud. He looked up at me, Mrs. Price, in this hospital. We take the word no very seriously. I signed a document called a privacy block. It meant that as far as the hospital's public system was concerned, Abigail Price did not exist. If anyone called asking for me, the operator would say there was no patient by that name. If anyone arrived at the front desk asking for my room number, they would be turned away. But we went further. Mr. Henderson added a flag to my file. Code Gray Risk. If these individuals appear on the premises, he said, tapping the photos of my parents we had provided, they will be intercepted by security in the lobby. They will not make it to the elevators. They will certainly not make it to the labor and delivery floor. You have my word. I walked out of that meeting clutching the signed copy of the security protocol like a shield. The weeks ticked by. I grew heavy and slow. The fear did not vanish, but it changed. It became focused. I had a plan. I had a team. The labor started at 4 a.m, 2 weeks before my due date. It didn't start with a dramatic splash, but with a low, rolling ache that wrapped around my hips and tightened like a vice. I lay in bed for an hour, timing them, 10 minutes apart, 8 minutes, 6. I woke Ethan. "It is time," I said. He sat up, instantly awake. "Okay, the bag is in the car. I will call Lorraine." We had discussed the logistics 100 times. Miles and Molly were nearly 2 years old now. They could not be dragged to the hospital in the middle of the night. They needed stability, and I needed Ethan to know they were safe so he wouldn't be distracted. But as I tried to stand, a contraction hit me so hard I doubled over, gripping the bedpost. "Ethan," I gasped. "It is fast. It is moving really fast." He looked at me, torn. He looked at the baby monitor where the twins were sleeping. "I can't leave them alone," he said, panic edging into his voice. "But I can't let you go alone." Lorraine appeared in the doorway. She was fully dressed. She was wearing comfortable shoes and had her car keys in her hand. She had evidently been sleeping with one eye open for a month. "Ethan," she said, her voice cutting through the panic. "Stay with the twins. If they wake up and neither of us is here, they will be terrified. I will take Abigail." But Ethan started. "I will be on the phone with you the whole time," Lorraine said. She walked over to me and took my arm, supporting my weight. "I have driven women to the hospital in snowstorms and hurricanes. I will get her there safely. You guard the home front." Ethan looked at me. Trust passed between us. "Go," he said. "Bring him home." The drive to the hospital was a blur of streetlights and deep breathing. Lorraine drove with aggressive competence, navigating the empty streets while coaching me through the waves of pain. "You are doing beautifully," she said. "Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. Do not clench your jaw." We pulled up to the emergency entrance. A nurse was waiting with a wheelchair. As I sat down, another contraction ripped through me. "Name," the admission clerk asked. "Abigail Price," Lorraine said. "She is a privacy block patient. Check the red flag on the file." The clerk typed, paused, and then looked at us with wide eyes. "I see it. Security has been notified. We are going straight up." The next 4 hours were a tunnel of intensity. My body, which I had felt betrayed by for so long, suddenly remembered exactly what to do. It was powerful. It was efficient. Lorraine did not leave my side. She was not the grandmother in the room. She was the coach. She wiped my forehead with cool cloths. She held the cup of ice chips to my lips. When the transition hit, and I started to panic, crying that I couldn't do it, that I was going to break, she leaned in close. "Look at me," she said. Her eyes were fierce and gray. "You have survived a hemorrhage. You have survived a betrayal by your own blood. You have survived a legal war. Pushing a baby out is nothing compared to what you have already beaten. You are made of steel. Abigail, now push." I looked at her. I saw the absolute belief in her eyes, and I pushed, at 8:12 in the morning, with the sun just cresting over the Blue Ridge Mountains outside the window. My son was born. He cried immediately a loud, indignant wail that sounded like the best song ever written. "Doctor," Evans placed him on my chest. He was warm and wet and heavy. He opened his dark eyes and looked at me, and the last fragment of the ice around my heart shattered. We named him Leo, the name we had saved. Ethan was on FaceTime, crying on the screen. Miles and Molly jumping on the bed behind him. "He is here," I sobbed. "He is safe." Lorraine stood back against the wall, giving us the moment. She looked tired, her silver hair escaping its bun, but she looked triumphant. Suddenly, the door to the delivery room opened. A nurse poked her head in. She looked flustered. She made eye contact with Lorraine and signaled her to come to the hallway. Lorraine stepped out. I saw her posture stiffen through the glass window of the door. I knew. I looked down at Leo, stroking his damp hair. I didn't feel fear anymore. I felt a supreme, untouchable distance. Lorraine came back in 2 minutes later. She looked annoyed, like someone who had stepped in gum, but not distressed. "It is them, isn't it?" I asked. Lorraine nodded. "They are in the lobby. Your mother, your father, and apparently a very large arrangement of balloons. Did they get past security?" I asked. Lorraine laughed. A short, sharp bark. They didn't even get past the information desk. The receptionist told them there was no Abigail Price listed. Your mother started screaming that she knew you were here because she felt it in her soul. Then she tried to run toward the elevators. And Mr. Henderson intercepted them. Lorraine said with a grim satisfaction, he told them that if they did not vacate the premises in 2 minutes, he would have them arrested for trespassing and disturbing the peace. He reminded them of the active lawsuit. Did they leave? They were escorted out. Lorraine corrected, loudly. Your father was threatening to sue the hospital. Your mother was crying to a random woman in the waiting room about how her daughter was stolen by a cult. It was quite a performance. I looked at the window. I imagined them down there, on the sidewalk, furious and impotent, for 30 years. Their anger had been the scariest thing in my world. Now, it was just noise. It was traffic. It was something that happened outside. While I was safe inside. They are gone. Abigail, Lorraine said, coming back to the bedside. They can't touch you. 2 hours later, a nurse came in carrying a package. It was wrapped in silver paper with a massive white bow. This was left at the front desk before the disturbance. The nurse said apologetically. Security scanned it. It is safe. But we didn't know if you wanted it. I looked at the card attached. To our precious grandson, love, Nana and Pop-Pop. Open it, I said. Lorraine unwrapped it. It was a silver cup, heavy and ornate. Engraved on the side was the name William. I stared at it. William, I asked. My father's middle name. Lorraine said. They didn't know his name. They didn't know if he was a boy or a girl until the leak. But they had engraved a cup with the name they wanted him to have. Assuming that their desires would naturally override my reality, they thought that if they sent a silver cup, the past year would vanish. They thought a piece of metal could bridge the gap of a $45,000 theft and a near-death experience. It was the ultimate gaslight. Here is a shiny object. Forget the blood. I looked at Leo, sleeping peacefully in the bassinet. He was Leo. He would never be William. He would never be a prop in their play. Throw it out, I said. Abigail, it is silver. Lorraine said. It is worth money. I don't want their money. I said, and I don't want them buying him. Lorraine looked at the cup. Then she looked at me. Actually, she said, her eyes glinting. Samantha is building the file for the damages hearing next month. This is evidence. It proves they knew about the birth and tried to bypass your boundaries. It proves they have money for silver cups, but not for the loan payments they defaulted on. She dropped the cup back into the box. I will put it in the binder, she said. I leaned back against the pillows. I was exhausted, sore, and overwhelmed. But as I watched Lorraine label the box Exhibit G, I smiled. My son was safe, my money was safe, and for the first time in my life. I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I had already thrown the shoes out. I closed my eyes and slept, and in my dreams, the phone didn't ring. Time is a funny thing. When you are in pain, it drags like a rusted chain, heavy and slow. But when you are healing, when you are busy building a life that actually belongs to you, it moves with the swift, clean current of a river. 2 years had passed since Leo was born. 2 years of silence. 2 years of peace. My life in Bridgewater had settled into a beautiful, chaotic rhythm. Miles and Molly were 4 years old now, a pair of blonde hurricanes who asked 1,000 questions a day. Leo was 2, a sturdy, serious toddler who followed his siblings everywhere. Ethan and I were solid. We were tired, yes, but it was the good kind of tired, the exhaustion of honest work and parenting, not the soul-sapping fatigue of managing emotional vampires. We had heard nothing from my parents. The lawsuit over the fraudulent Pineville loan had ended in a default judgment against them because they simply never showed up to court. The foreclosure had happened. We assumed they had lost the house. We didn't know where they were living, and for the first time in my life, I hadn't spent my nights wondering. I was safe, or so I thought. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon at the supermart on the edge of town. It was the kind of mundane errand that makes up 90% of suburban life. I was pushing a cart filled with milk, apples, and dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets. Leo was in the seat, kicking his legs, while Miles and Molly walked beside me, holding onto the cart handle as per our safety rule. We turned into aisle 9 cereal and granola bars. I was reaching for a box of oats when I felt the air in the aisle change. It wasn't a sound, it was a pressure. The hair on my arms stood up. A primal warning system that hadn't been deactivated, only dormant. I turned my head, standing 10 feet away, clutching a basket containing a loaf of white bread and a generic bottle of aspirin. Was my mother? Marcia Price looked like a photocopy of herself that had been left out in the sun too long. She had always been vain, the kind of woman who wouldn't check the mail without lipstick. Now, her hair was dull, the gray roots showing 3 inches of growth. Her clothes were different, too. She was wearing ill-fitting polyester slacks and a worn cardigan I didn't recognize. She looked smaller. She looked brittle. But then our eyes met, and I saw that some things hadn't changed. Her eyes were still the same. They held that familiar, terrifying mix of martyrdom and calculation. She looked at me not with love, but with the hunger of a starving person spotting a meal. Abigail. She breathed. The sound of my name in her voice made my stomach clench so hard I nearly dropped the oats. I instinctively stepped between her and the cart, shielding Leo with my body. Miles and Molly, sensing my tension, pressed closer to my legs. "Who is that?" Mommy Molly asked, loud in the quiet aisle. My mother flinched. The pain on her face looked genuine for a split second. She looked at the twins, her grandchildren, and saw only blank, curious stares. They didn't know her. To them, she was just a lady in the cereal aisle. "It is me, babies," my mother said, her voice trembling. "It is your Nana. Don't you remember?" Nana Molly shook her head and hid her face in my coat. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I gripped the handle of the cart until my knuckles turned white. My mother took a step forward. I put up a hand. "Stop," I said. The word was quiet, but it landed like a slap. She froze. "Abigail, please," she said, and the tears started. They came easily, as they always did. "I have missed you so much. We have all missed you. Your father, he asks about you every day." I said nothing. I just watched her, analyzing her like the financial risks I managed at work. Why was she here? Bridgewater was 40 minutes from where they used to live. Had they moved here? Were they stalking me? "We are staying at the Motel 6 off the highway," she said, answering the question I hadn't asked. "We lost the house. Abigail. The bank took it. We have been displaced." She waited for me to react. She waited for the guilt to kick in, for the dutiful daughter to rush forward and offer a guest room. I stayed silent. "It has been so hard," she continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Your father's health is bad. His heart. And Bryce, well, Bryce is trying. But he has his own life. We are all alone. Abigail. We are family. How can you let us live like this?" I looked at her clothes. I looked at the cheap bread in her basket. Part of me, the part that was still a little girl wanting her mommy, felt a twinge of pity. But then I looked at Leo. I remembered the blood on the bathroom floor. I remembered the silence on the phone when I begged for help. "We didn't let you do anything," I said, my voice steady. "You did this. You committed fraud. You stole my identity. You sued me." I know, she said, waving her hand as if swatting away a fly. "We made mistakes. We were desperate. People do crazy things when they are scared. Abigail. But we are past that now. We just want to make amends." She took another step. I just want to hug my grandchildren, she said, reaching out a hand toward Leo. Don't touch him, I snapped. The venom in my voice surprised even me. My mother recoiled, pulling her hand back to her chest. Fine, she said, her tone hardening, the mask slipping just a fraction. You want to be cruel. Fine, but listen to me. Abigail, we are in trouble, real trouble. Not just money trouble. What kind of trouble, I asked. Bills, she said vaguely. Debts, your father. He borrowed some money from people who aren't banks. We need a bridge. Abigail, just a small bridge. $5,000, that is all. Just to get them off our backs so we can leave town. We will go to Florida. You will never see us again. I stared at her. 2 years of silence, and it took her less than 3 minutes to ask for $5,000. I don't have $5,000 for you. I said, You do, she hissed, her eyes darting around to see if anyone was listening. You and Ethan are rich. We know you got promoted. We know you bought that new car. Just give us the money. Abigail, if you don't help us, it is going to get worse for everyone, including you. For me, I asked, How? She looked flustered, her eyes shifting away from mine. Because of the papers, she mumbled. What papers, I asked. The house papers, she said. And the other thing, the guarantor thing. If we go under, if they come for us, they are going to look at the paperwork. Abigail, and your name is on it. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the supermarket air conditioning. My name is on what I asked. My voice low and dangerous. The Pineville loan is closed. The credit card was fraud. What papers are you talking about? My mother looked terrified. She realized she had said too much. She gripped her basket tighter. The beach property, she stammered. You don't have a beach property. I said, Not ours. She said, The one we managed. Look, it doesn't matter. Just help us. Abigail, please, if you give us the cash. We can fix the filing before the audit happens. We can remove your name, but we need the cash to pay the fee. The audit, the filing. She wasn't talking about a loan shark. She was talking about a structured financial instrument. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I realized she wasn't just broke. She was a fugitive. Get away from me, I said. Abigail, if you are not out of this aisle in 10 seconds, I am calling the police, I said, and I am telling them exactly where you are staying. My mother looked at me with pure, distilled hatred. The grandmother act vanished. You are a cold bitch, she spat. I hope your children treat you exactly the way you treat me. She turned and marched away, her cheap shoes squeaking on the linoleum. I stood there, shaking. Miles tugged on my coat. Mommy, are you okay? He asked. I took a deep breath. I forced a smile onto my face. I am fine, baby, I said. That was just someone who made a mistake. Come on, let's get the nuggets. I finished the shopping on autopilot. I drove home with my eyes constantly checking the rearview mirror. When I got inside, I locked the door and engaged the deadbolt. I didn't unpack the groceries. I went straight to the office and called Samantha Keene. She answered on the second ring. Samantha, I said, I saw her. Who, my mother? I said, in the supermarket. She asked for money. But Samantha? She said something strange. Tell me, Samantha said. I could hear the click of her opening a file. She said she needed money to fix a filing before an audit. I said, she mentioned house papers and a guarantor thing, and she mentioned a beach property. Samantha was silent for a moment. Abigail, she said slowly, I need you to log into your credit monitoring right now. I am doing it. I said, waking up my computer. I have been tracking a discrepancy for the last 48 hours. Samantha said, I didn't want to worry you until I confirmed it. But since she approached you, we can't wait. Do you see a new inquiry from a company called Coastal Deed and Title? I scrolled down. My hands were shaking. Yes, I said, dated 3 days ago, hard inquiry. That is not for a credit card, Samantha said. That is for a title transfer or a mortgage modification. But I didn't buy anything. I said, I know, Samantha said. I had my paralegal pull the public records in the county where that inquiry originated. It is in Horry County, South Carolina, Myrtle Beach. My parents don't own property in Myrtle Beach. I said, they can't even afford a motel room. No, Samantha said. They don't, but according to the deed recorded 18 months ago. You do? I felt the room spin. What I whispered, there is a condo in Myrtle Beach, Samantha said, her voice clinical and cold. It was purchased 18 months ago. The primary borrower is listed as a shell LLC called Price Family Trust, but the guarantor, the person who backed the loan, is you. 18 months ago. I said, that was right after Leo was born. Exactly. Samantha said, but here's the twist, Abigail, and you need to sit down for this. I am sitting. I said, to get a loan of that size with a brand new LLC, they needed 2 guarantors. Samantha explained, one wasn't enough because your credit file has a fraud alert on it now. The bank required a second signer with a clean history and a familial relationship to the primary principals, who I asked. Who did they use? Bryce number. Samantha said. Bryce has terrible credit. The second guarantor is listed as Thomas J. Price. I frowned. I don't know a Thomas Price. My dad has a brother named Jerry. My grandfather was named William. Exactly. Samantha said. I ran a background check on Thomas J. Price. He doesn't exist. Abigail, what do you mean? The social security number attached to Thomas J. Price belongs to a man named Arthur Miller, who died in 1998. Samantha said, your parents created a synthetic identity. They combined a stolen social security number of a deceased person with a fake name, built up a false credit history for this person over a few years, and then used him as your cosigner. I stared at the wall. The level of sophistication was terrifying. This wasn't just signing my name on a check. This was racketeering. They created a fake uncle, I whispered. Yes, Samantha said. And here is why your mother is panicking. The bank that holds the mortgage on the beach condo, they are being acquired. The auditors are going through every loan file. They are going to verify the existence of Thomas J. Price when they realize he is a ghost. They are going to look at the other guarantor. Me. I said, you, Samantha confirmed. Your parents aren't asking for $5,000 to pay a debt. They need the money to likely bribe someone or pay a fee to dissolve the LLC before the audit hits. They are trying to bury the body of this fake uncle before the bank finds it. If the bank finds it, I started. If the bank finds it, it is federal bank fraud. Samantha said, it is conspiracy. It is 20 years in prison. And because your name is on the deed as the guarantor, you are technically a party to the crime unless we prove conclusively and immediately that you were a victim, not a participant. I remembered my mother's face in the supermarket. It is going to get worse for everyone, including you. She wasn't threatening to hurt me physically. She was threatening to drag me into a federal indictment. She was willing to let me go to prison for a fraud I didn't commit, just to save herself. She looked at my children. I said, my voice shaking. She looked at Leo, and she was calculating how to use me as a human shield. Abigail, listen to me, Samantha said. Her voice was sharp, cutting through my shock. I am listening. We are done playing defense, Samantha said. We are done with credit disputes and angry letters. This is a felony. This is active criminal conduct involving synthetic identity theft. What do we do? I asked. I need you to come to my office tomorrow morning. She said, bring Ethan, bring the binder, but leave the emotions at home. Why? Because I am calling the FBI, Samantha said. We are going to self-report the fraud before the bank finds it. We are going to hand them the evidence of the Pineville loan, the Key Largo card, and this Myrtle Beach phantom. She paused, letting the weight of the next words sink in. If we do this, Abigail, there is no going back. Once the feds are involved, you cannot drop the charges because you feel sorry for them. You cannot ask for leniency because they are old. They will be arrested. They will be prosecuted. They will likely die in prison. I looked out the window. I saw Miles and Molly playing on the swing set Ethan had built. I saw Leo toddling across the grass. I thought about my mother standing in the cereal aisle, looking at those beautiful, Innocent children, and seeing nothing but leverage. I don't feel sorry for them. I said. Good, Samantha said. I hung up the phone. I walked into the kitchen. Ethan was unpacking the groceries I had abandoned. He looked at me, holding the box of dinosaur nuggets. What is wrong? He asked. You look like you saw a ghost. I did. I said, I saw a ghost named Thomas Price. I walked over to the trash can. I took the receipt from the supermarket, the one that proved I was in the same building as my mother, and I smoothed it out. I'm going to put this in the binder. I said. Ethan put down the nuggets. Is it over? He asked. No, I said, looking at the date on the receipt. But it is about to be. I picked up a pen and wrote on the back of the receipt, last contact. Then I looked at my husband. Pack a bag for the kids. I said, we are taking them to your sister's house for the weekend. I have a meeting tomorrow, and I don't want them to see what I have to do. What do you have to do? I have to put my parents in jail, I said. And for the first time in 2 years, I didn't feel afraid. I felt surgical. The tumor had come back, and this time, I wasn't just treating the symptoms, I was cutting it out. The conference room at Keene & Associates was designed to intimidate. It was on the 42nd floor, encased in glass, with a view of the Charlotte skyline that made human problems look like ant trails. The air conditioning was set to a brisk 68 degrees, a temperature Samantha Keene called the climate of accountability. I sat at the head of the mahogany table. To my right sat Ethan, his hand resting on top of mine. To my left sat Lorraine, upright and unmoving, a sentinel in a navy blazer. We were waiting for the other side. This was not a standard mediation. This was an intervention with legal teeth. Samantha had arranged it as a final courtesy or perhaps a final trap before the federal indictment regarding the Thomas Price synthetic identity fraud was unsealed. She had told my parents that we were willing to discuss a global settlement regarding the Pineville foreclosure and the Myrtle Beach deed. They walked in at 10 o'clock sharp. My father, Robert, led the way. He was wearing a suit that was 10 years out of style, trying to project an air of patriarch authority that evaporated the moment he saw the security guard standing by the door. My mother, Marcia, followed him. She was clutching a tissue, her eyes already red-rimmed, prepared to play the victim before she had even sat down. And then, trailing behind them, looking confused and annoyed, was Bryce. He was wearing a polo shirt with a sponsor logo on the chest. He stopped when he saw us. What is this? Bryce asked, looking from me to our parents. Mom said we were meeting to sign some papers to release a trust fund or something. She said you were finally helping out. I looked at my mother. She refused to meet my eyes. She had lied to him to get him here. She needed him in the room because his name was on the fraudulent credit card application in Key Largo, and she likely thought his presence would guilt me into silence. Sit down, Bryce, Samantha said. Her voice was not a request. Bryce sat, looking wary. My parents took the seats opposite us. The table was 5 feet wide, but the distance between us felt like an ocean. Abigail. My father started, clearing his throat. I am glad we are doing this. Family should not be fighting in courts. We are ready to put this behind us. We forgive you for the misunderstanding at the supermarket. I stared at him. The audacity was so absolute it was almost impressive. He was facing federal prison time, and he was offering me forgiveness. There is no misunderstanding. Robert, Samantha said, opening the thick black binder in front of her, and we are not here to hug it out. We are here to establish the record of facts before Mrs. Price decides whether to press the button that sends you both to a federal penitentiary. My mother let out a gasp. You wouldn't. She is my daughter. Samantha ignored her. She turned a page in the binder. Fact 1, she said. On the night of October 14th, 2023, at 2:07 in the morning, Abigail Price contacted you requesting emergency childcare assistance because she was hemorrhaging. You refused because you were in Key Largo at a tennis tournament funded by her money. That is not true, my mother cried. We couldn't leave. We had obligations. Samantha held up a hand. The Night Owl invoice was projected onto the screen on the wall behind us. 2:45 in the morning. Samantha read, Patient transported to surgery. Parents absent. She flipped the page. Fact 2. She continued. For 8 years, Abigail transferred $2,900 monthly to your account. You claimed this was for essential living expenses. She projected a spreadsheet. It showed the flow of money. Date November 1st. Deposit from Abigail. $2,900. Date November 3rd. Wire transfer to Bryce Price. $2,000. Memo. Training camp fees. Bryce's head snapped up. He stared at the screen. Wait, he said. That was Dad told me that was from his investment dividends. My father shifted in his seat. Well, money is fungible. Bryce, it all goes into one pot. It didn't go into a pot. Dad, Bryce said, his voice rising. It went from her account to yours to mine. Samantha flipped the page again. Fact 3. She said, when Abigail stopped the payments, you forged her signature on a $45,000 loan against your home in Pineville. You defaulted. The lender is now suing her. She projected the loan document with the shaky signature. And fact 4, Samantha said, her voice dropping an octave, the creation of Thomas Price, a fake identity used to purchase a condo in Myrtle Beach, with Abigail listed as the guarantor without her knowledge. The room went dead silent. My mother went pale. How do you know about that? She whispered. Because I know how to read a credit report, Samantha said, and because the FBI is very interested in people who invent dead uncles to defraud banks. My father slammed his hand on the table. This is entrapment, he shouted. You are trying to frame us. Abigail agreed to help. She always said she would take care of us. It was a verbal contract. There was no contract. Samantha shot back. There was a daughter trying to buy your love, and 2 predators eating her alive. My mother burst into tears. It was a loud, wailing sound that filled the room. We did it for the family, she sobbed, looking frantically at Bryce. We did it for you. Bryce. You needed the image. You needed the condo for the scouts to see. You said you couldn't make the tour unless you looked successful. We were just trying to give you a chance. The silence that followed that outburst was heavy enough to crush bones. Bryce stood up slowly. He looked at his mother. Then he looked at the screen where the money trail was still glowing. You stole her identity, he said. His voice was quiet, stunned. You stole Abigail's identity to buy me a condo. We didn't steal it, darling, my mother pleaded. We just borrowed it. She has so much. She didn't need it. And you are so special. You just needed a push. Bryce looked at me, for the first time in his life. He didn't look at me with condescension or indifference. He looked at me with horror. Abby, he said, I didn't know. I swear to God. I thought they were rich. I thought you were just being stingy. I know, I said softly. They played us both. Bryce. I was the wallet, and you were the show pony. My father stood up, his face red. That is enough, he yelled at me. You ungrateful girl, after everything we did for you, we raised you, we put a roof over your head, and now you sit there with your high-priced lawyer and humiliate us in front of your brother. You owe us. I felt the old fear flicker. The voice that had controlled me for 30 years was shouting, and my instinct was to shrink. But then, a chair scraped against the floor. Lorraine stood up. She didn't shout. She didn't slam the table. She simply rose, smoothing the front of her blazer, and looked my father in the eye. Sit down. Robert, she said. My father blinked, startled by the intervention. Stay out of this. Lorraine, this is family business. No, Lorraine said. It became my business the night I walked into the recovery room and found my daughter-in-law alone because you were too busy protecting your investment in a tennis match. She walked around the table until she was standing just a few feet from them. She looked like a giant. I saw her, Lorraine said. Her voice was low, trembling with a controlled fury that was terrifying to behold. I saw her lying in that bed, gray as a sheet, hooked up to monitors. She had just lost a child. She was empty. She was broken. Lorraine leaned in. And I saw you walk in. She hissed. I saw you, Marcia. And I saw you. Robert, you didn't ask if she was in pain. You didn't ask to see the medical chart. You asked about a bank transfer. She pointed a finger at them, her hand steady as a rock. You stood over her hospital bed and asked for money before you asked if she was going to live. My mother stopped crying. She stared at Lorraine, her mouth open. That is what you are, Lorraine said. You aren't parents. You are ghouls. And you will never, ever get within 10 feet of her or her children again. She turned to Bryce. And you, she said, you are a grown man. If you have any dignity left, you will walk out of this room and never take another dime from them, because every dollar they give you is covered in your sister's blood. Bryce looked at me. He looked at the evidence on the screen. He looked at the parents who had turned him into an accomplice. He didn't say a word. He just took off the sponsored polo shirt, right there in the conference room, leaving himself in a white undershirt. He threw the polo on the table in front of my father. I am done, Bryce said. He walked out the door. My mother screamed his name, but the door clicked shut. Now, Samantha said, closing the binder. Here are your options. She slid a document across the table. Option A, she said. We hand this entire file to the FBI agent waiting in the lobby. You will be arrested before you reach the elevator. You will be charged with identity theft, bank fraud, and wire fraud. My father was shaking now. What is option B? He croaked. Option B, Samantha said. You sign this. It is a confession of judgment. You admit to the fraud. You agree to liquidate any remaining assets to pay off the Pineville loan and the Myrtle Beach mortgage. You accept a permanent restraining order preventing you from contacting Abigail, Ethan, or their children forever, and you move out of the state of North Carolina. If you do this, Samantha continued, Abigail will decline to press charges on the identity theft. The bank may still come for you on the foreclosure, but you won't go to federal prison today. My mother looked at the paper, then she looked at me. Abigail, she whispered, we are your parents. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had given birth to me. I searched for any spark of love, any flicker of connection, but all I saw was a stranger who owed me money. Sign it, I said. They signed. It took 10 minutes. The scratching of the pen was the only sound in the room. When they were done, Samantha took the papers. Get out, she said. They stood up. My mother tried to look at me one last time, perhaps to deliver a final curse or a final plea. But I turned my chair away. I looked out the window at the city below. I heard the door open and close. They were gone. Ethan let out a long breath and slumped back in his chair. It is over, he said. I looked at the view. The sun was shining on the glass towers. Down on the street, people were rushing to lunch, living their lives, completely unaware of the drama that had just played out in the sky. It wasn't the dramatic, explosive ending I had seen in movies. There were no police sirens wailing as they were dragged away. There was just a signature on a piece of paper and a quiet exit. But as I sat there, I realized that was exactly what I wanted. I didn't want a spectacle. I didn't want them to be tragic figures. I wanted them to be irrelevant. I turned back to the table. Lorraine was sitting down again, pouring herself a glass of water. Her hand was shaking slightly, the only sign of the adrenaline that had just coursed through her. I reached out and took her hand. Thank you, I said. She squeezed my fingers. You did the hard part, she said. You survived. I thought about the list doctor. Aris had made me write, the column of things I had given, and the column of things I had received. I had spent my life trying to fill a bucket that had a hole in the bottom. I had poured my love, my money, and my sanity into a black hole, hoping that one day it would fill up enough for me to stand on. But you can't build a foundation on a void. I looked at Ethan, who was smiling at me with eyes full of pride. I looked at Lorraine, who had stood between me and the wolves. I thought about Leo and the twins, safe at their aunt's house, playing in a yard that was paid for with honest money. I stood up. I am ready to go home. I said, home. It wasn't a place where people asked for transfers at 2 a.m. It wasn't a place where love was conditional on a credit score. I walked to the elevator with my real family. The doors closed, sealing us in. And as we descended, I felt lighter than I had ever felt in my life. I had lost a baby. I had lost the parents I thought I had. But in the fire of that loss, I had been forged into something unbreakable. I looked at Lorraine's reflection in the elevator door. "Con," she said softly, using the nickname only she used. "You okay?" I smiled. "I am not just okay." "Mom," I said, "I am free. Thank you so much for listening to Abigail's story. It was a long journey from that bathroom floor to the freedom of that elevator. But she made it. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening while driving to work in London, cooking dinner in Texas, or maybe relaxing in Sydney? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading your stories. Please make sure to subscribe to Kate Revenge Stories. Hit that like button and smash the hype button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear that it is okay to walk away from toxic family. Stay safe, and see you in the next video.